Good morning, everybody. Am I on here? Okay. Can everybody hear me this morning? No? I'm getting no. Can you hear me now? There we go. Okay, so I'm using this microphone even though my voice could probably project in here because we're live streaming this training and we're also recording it. So anything that's said that's not on the microphone, nobody can hear that's watching it virtually. So FYI, we have both of our presenters today who are mic'd, and then I will have this microphone as well. If you have a question, what will happen is you ask the question and then I'm going to repeat the question in the microphone so the people watching it virtually can hear what the question was. Or maybe Paul or Brian, you could sort of reiterate the question when people ask them as well. So welcome. Thank you for coming this morning. I drove from Arroyo Grande and thought I was going to get washed out in the rain. I don't know if anybody else drove from. It's coming this way. It was crazy hail, and we were driving about 30 miles an hour on the freeway. So thank you for coming. I know it's a little crazy this morning. So the Safety Task Force has been working on lots of great trainings for our faculty and staff. This is, I think, our third training that we've done. We did more of a what to do in the case of an active shooter training last year. And then, so this one's a little bit more focused on logistics, what to expect on campus, what agencies will be coming on campus. We have Paul Grohowski, who's our new chief of police on campus, if you haven't met him. Great guy. I was on his hiring committee, so we were so excited to get him here on our campus. We also have Brian Keith, where's Brian, who is visiting us from Los Angeles. He's a protective security advisor. So he's going to be talking Homeland Security, correct?
Correct.
So he's from Homeland Security, so he's going to be giving us some great information as well. So I already talked about the microphone. We have a sign-up sheet. If anybody hasn't signed up, please do, maybe at the break. Any questions before we get started? Brian, are you good? Okay. All right, Paul, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for watching. I find it interesting when I teach in a room of cops, we fill the room from the back forward, so I know this isn't all cops, so the spattering is interesting. I know you all instruct, so it's interesting to see the dynamics where people sit. A couple things I'm going to go through, just some basic stuff in the beginning of this PowerPoint, and I'll explain the format of the instruction. We're teaching on mass casualty incidents, what we affectionately called MCIs. That includes everything from active shooters to some of the other threats that we're starting to see in our country and around the world. And my purpose here, or the whole purpose of doing this, is to try to educate all of you into a little snapshot of some of the things that keep me up at night. We're all here together. It's all our responsibility to keep everyone safe on campus. And I'm hoping that at the result of this, you guys will help be my eyes and ears for the campus. Just brief introductions. That's me. I'm a 21-year law enforcement veteran. Most of my time I've spent in municipalities. I started my career off in Connecticut, in Danbury, Connecticut, for 6 years. Went down to South Florida to the fastest growing city in the nation, Port St. Lucie. We went from 70,000 to 170,000 people in 10 years and are about half built out. 11 of those years I spent as a SWAT guy on that team there. And my view of the world for 11 years was that. I was a sniper, team leader there for a bit. So I got to see some up-close visuals of some horrible things that happen in the world and the way humans shouldn't behave. The great thing about my history, and the reason I bring it up, is I trained for the worst kind of stuff that could happen in an environment like this. So when I transitioned from municipal work and retired from policing, I went into university policing. For 2 years, I was a chief of police at Adams State University in Alamosa, Colorado. And a different dynamic, different paradigm shift for me, entering your world, and the students, that demographic, the traditional 18 to 20-something-year-old. I figured I could maybe make a better difference in the world of influencing some of these young minds and changing the conversation. You know, I say bring the professionalism profession back to the profession of policing. I think we're kind of broad brushed in negative light, and if I could change that stereotype, I can tell you this, I've worked with a lot of really professional men and women in my career, and for the most part, everybody's well-intended and trying to do good in the world. The worst part about this is the response. The thing I want to key on is the prevention aspect and highlight some of the things that we can do, because prevention is our goal. I'm going to redo the introductions. Brian is from Homeland Security. Him and his partner, I've worked with the Department of Homeland Security as a chief at a university previously. They have some great tools and assets available to us. Back in December, myself, Brian, and his partner, we did a multi-campus site inspection of all of our campuses and facilities. There's going to be a comprehensive report that comes out probably in the next 3 to 4 weeks that we're going to present to administration that'll show some of the areas of deficiencies, some of the areas that we should improve on, and some of the things that seem obvious probably to all of you. I'm also on the safety committee and on the facilities council. One of the things I can tell you that we just got funding for, and it started before I got here, is thumb locks for doors. So some of your classrooms will have them. Some of them do have them, and I think we got don't quote me on the number, $180,000 allocated to start doing in the next round. So some of these preventative measures that are already being implemented. The training kind of goes in twofold. I'm going to present my piece. I came across, I did a big multi-agency mass casualty exercise in Colorado at our university. Part of our partnership was with our local trauma center. They wanted to get a higher level of trauma certification, so they solicited us as a site to do the training. Working with my state, local, and federal partners there, we decided to put on a big shebang, and it's a big involved to do. And as a result of which, our FBI special agent out of the Denver field office presented me with this video for a training tool. And it's for law enforcement. I've seen a lot of different training videos and different seminars. I found it to be one of the better produced videos, and the whole gist of my presentation is to prepare you for that presentation. I'm going to go through a couple slides, show you the video. We'll take a short break, 10, 15 minutes, up to you. Then Brian's going to take over for us. I got to tell you this, I've lived in a world that's kind of a different level of heightened alertness. Some of the things that law enforcement officers see throughout their careers, we kind of take for granted. You know, when we respond to crashes and people are, fatally injured, it's kind of part of their job, so you kind of harden a little bit. I've done some mock scenario. We've done some bank robbery, pretend bank robberies with different corporate people, and it dawned on me after the fact that some of the stuff we present might disturb you a little bit. It might give you a glimpse of the world that you might not want to see. And if it does, speak to somebody. We have great counselors on staff. Talk to me, talk amongst your peers. Don't let it get bottled up. So I got to kind of give you that warning, but it's necessary. We are all responsible to be the guardians of this campus for all of us and for all of our students as well. So the world we lived in has changed. It's different. From the time I entered this profession until just last year, Brian and I were kind of talking. They came in December, and I kind of lived at a heightened level of alertness. Some people might call it paranoia. But they started, one of the things they're assessing in our buildings is the drivable distance, how quick a car can gain speed to a certain speed level, and if it rams a building, the damage it could do to the infrastructure. So even me, I'm like, seems kind of out there. Right after they left, what do we have? Ohio State University. Somebody drove a vehicle across a pedestrian crowded area, followed up by Germany. And again, a lot of these things you're seeing internationally, there's copycats out in the world. So when somebody does it, somebody else gets the idea that's a good thing to do. It's not a good thing to do, it never is. And then, so November, we got this, Germany, December, Fort Lauderdale, the airport, you saw the video there. What's next? And here's the reality of this mass casualty incident thing. It's not just active shooter. And everybody wants to knee-jerk and say, okay, well, when somebody shoots, we should do some kind of legislation on guns. What do you do with someone who drives a car across a group of people? Regulate cars? And there are preventative things we can do within our infrastructure and harden our targets, and we'll be addressing some of those things in the year to come. But again, prevention and awareness is the key. Preparation response is secondary. One thing we're going to hit on is this theme. What do you do? So if you know nothing else, if nothing comes else out of this presentation, those are your three responses: run, hide, fight. If you learn of something, get away from here. Don't worry about what should I do, where should I gather. No, go. Think about yourself. Property is replaceable, life isn't. So if there's a choice of, let me pack up this and take my whatever with me, no, go. Get your keys, go. Get out of here. If it's in your building, if it happens here, think of the rooms that you are in on a regular basis or where you're at, and don't think like, if it happens and that, when. If it happens, when it happens, then I'm going to do this. Not if then, when then. So like in a room like this, I've already assessed this room. I know all the entrances, egresses, the places I'm vulnerable, where I could get to, where I could take shelter, take cover. Just think like that. I'm not saying be paranoid, but just be alert. Alert to your surroundings. This is a scene from Ohio State. Car drove across that pedestrian area. I do believe there's a higher being in this world, there's a fate, there's a God in the sky. I don't know what your religions are, I'm not preaching religion, but just so happens when this came out, a lot of the stuff that initially is reported, consider it to be disinformation. You got to go with what you got at the time. This report came in as an active shooter originally. All over the news, active shooter. Why? Because the moment that this person used their car as a weapon, then got out with a knife and started slashing people, there's a campus cop right nearby. The shot was fired. The campus cop eliminated the threat. So they heard gunshots, they saw victims. What's the, put two and two together, the nexus is, it's a shooting. So their campus alerts put it out as such. December, I can't imagine being in a Christmas shopping area and that thing comes bearing down on you. What do you do with that? But that's what they used. That was a weapon of choice in Berlin back in December in their Christmas market. In Fort Lauderdale, those images came out. I saw the running video on this when it first got leaked out. And right behind this shooter, when he started doing this, there's a couple, and they had this kind of stunned look. So the question I ask for you, you're in the airport, I fly, I'm sure everybody here's flown at some point. What do you do if that happens where you're at? And that's your mindset. You've got to start thinking in public settings as to anything's possible. Anybody's capable of anything, unfortunately. Well, first thing is run. This scene's from Fort Lauderdale Airport, and there's a bunch of different imagery out there. I don't know the logistics of where they were in relationship to the shooting, but how many people were dragging bags? There's some people that are in pretty good sprints in that captured picture, but there's others that are just kind of lackadaisical pulling through. Is it important to have your carry-on bag? Rhetorically. Or is it important to be alive and buy another one or find it later? Hide. Interesting, this is the Ohio State response. The other part of this I like is they barricaded. So they're in a classroom, they have their alert, comes out, says active shooter on campus. They chose based on the logistics to barricade in that room. So not just stay in there, but let's put some physical objects between us and the doorway. Human beings are lazy creatures. We're going to go the path of least resistance most of the time. If a shooter comes into that room, pulls that door, and happens to get in, are they going to bother? Are they going to be persistent enough to go through? Hopefully not. So I thought that was pretty clever. Really good image of that. Another part of hide, always better behind a cop with a gun. I love this picture. God bless those first responders. I mean, really, interesting breed, police, firemen, EMS, run towards the sound of gunfire. I think we probably all should have failed our psych. Last case is fight. Now, obviously, this is the law enforcement portion of the fight, but anything and everything you can do if it happens, if they get in here, if you weren't able to get away, you weren't able to barricade, now you're faced with someone, all bets are off. Use anything and every tool you can. You might get hurt, you might get injured, but you might live. Interesting part of this, the gentleman on the right, Officer Pitts, before I left Connecticut, I was a cop there as a field training officer. He was the last Danbury police officer I trained before I went to Florida. He's now working in Hollywood, Florida, and he was one of the first responders. So it really warmed my heart to see him on the news and get that image there. So what do we do? How do we get into this prevention thing? Everybody familiar with CAST or anyone not familiar with CAST? There's cards up front for CAST. It's our way to capture people who may be going through crisis. Students, faculty, peers, yourself. Everybody's got ups and downs in their lives. Things happen to people that are significant to them. Might not seem a lot to you. What I've experienced in college and universities, I've dealt with a lot of suicidal students in my previous place. And when I got down to the gist of why they're suicidal, we can all sit back and go, well, what do you mean you had a test and you felt that you weren't going to get a good grade, or your parents weren't going to feel that your report? To us, not a big deal. But to that person in that moment in their life, it's crisis. You guys are a first response. You're going to know your students. You're going to know your peers. If someone's going through a bad time, refer them. God bless. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't hurt you. It's a very simple process, and I'll show you how we do it. The other significant part of that, almost every, because there's no such thing as always and never, suspect in a mass casualty incident announces what they're going to do in advance. They either tell someone, they post it, they have indicators that other people, after it was all said and done, get interviewed and they say, oh yeah, I knew that. Oh, he acted strange, or he was a weird person, or she was a weird person. They're gonna forecast what they're gonna do. Our job is to be the ears and eyes to pick up on that and get that person into crisis counseling before it happens. It's all our responsibility. On the website, that's what the CAS referral looks like. It's simple. The person's name, if you know their identification number, great. If not, don't worry about it. Yes, ma'am.
Chief, that doesn't look like the right slide shot or screenshot or CAS referral. That's for academic.
Oh, what happened?
Yeah, that's exactly. And it looks similar to that.
My bad.
But yeah, different link.
It's simple. I might have pulled up the wrong screen, but it's, let me go back to it.
Similar. It looks very similar, but yeah, it will.
Very simple to do.
It's a quick link for CAS.
Right.
Thank you. Rave alerts. If you're not signed up for Rave alerts, please do. That is our early warning notice system. So it's going to be only for emergencies. It's not going to be, there's a pep rally, there's a football game this Saturday. When that goes off, it's going to be something significant. We addressed a lot of this through the President's office with Andrew now in his position. Andrew's been a great asset to us to work with us to get these alerts out. It's simple. It's going to be your what to do if in case of a crisis. So in the event of that slide I showed you earlier, the students that got the first alert was active shooter at Ohio State, so they're barricaded. So we actually spoke about this earlier. Well, now what do I do? Well, the Rave alert's going to tell you what to do. It's going to tell you when the all clear is. So stay where you are. It's going to seem like an eternity depending on where the incident's happening. It could be across campus, and you might look out and see nothing and feel it's okay to go out. And maybe it is, but wait till the all clear comes out. That's going to be your early alert and a progressive alert through the system. The other portion of this is during the beginning of your classes, I encourage you, throw up the slides on how to sign up Raves. Have all your students sit there 5 minutes. It takes 5 minutes, maybe not even. Hey, sign up for this. Walk them through it. There's a number of students regularly. We have a small percentage of our populace, both student and faculty, that are not signed up. So please do that. That's going to be the first thing that's going to help us. Andrew sees a screen that looks like this. It's the same kind of thing. You can put a message in. He can send out the alert on any one or any multiple of these different feeds, Twitter, Facebook, text message. It's a real quick one-click method to go, boop, type it and send it. The video that we're going to play, again, I think originally, and I can't speak for the feds, but what happened on a national level is there are so many local incidents happening that right now, if we have an incident of a mass casualty, we can't do it alone. We have to work with partners. We have to work with our local, state, and federal partners. The feds have a plethora of resources, and this is kind of a advertising video for them to show us what's available to us, and that they're not going to take over our investigation, but they'll assist us to any degree, from victim assistance to interviews to evidentiary, just giving us the resources. There is something that does happen on a federal basis, where if something happens like that locally, DC puts a war room together, for lack of better words. So they start coordinating all of their national resources that, stage them, start them. They can help us with PIO and media stuff, from Media Crush throughout. I went to a debriefing for the San Bernardino shooting just this year, and it's amazing to hear the people on the ground explain what happens behind the scenes and how much work is involved in this. And this video, all fictitious, is based on a combination of real-world events. At the end of the video, there's a number of different law enforcement leaders that handle these scenes, from Sandy Hook to LAX shooting to Fort Hood, the Aurora Theater shooting, all of these different types of incidents and lessons learned there. So watch it with a grain of salt that it's meant for law enforcement. It may tug on your heartstrings, and hopefully it does, but look objectively and listen to the lessons learned as what we can do as individuals and as a campus.
You treat me like dirt. Worse than dirt. Like I don't even exist anymore. And when you do notice me, it's only to treat me like shit in front of your teammates and the rest of the school. You could have any girl you want, but no. You have to pick Stacy, the only girl I've ever loved. I gonna compete against a football star? You'll find out. How am I gonna compete against a football star? You'll find out.
So, what else do we know about him?
Well, he told one of my players last week that he bought a new gun.
But he's been hunting since he was a kid.
Well, if he's a hunter, that's not a change in conduct. But it does tell us he has access to guns. What we're looking for now are behavioral clues that show change.
Randy quit the Spanish club last week.
Have you spoken with the teacher in charge of that?
I don't care about the Spanish club. It's obvious he's about to snap.
We respond to situations like this all the time, and what we see is kids like this don't just snap. They move through a series of behaviors on a trajectory towards violence.
Hey, happy holidays. Happy holidays. You on your way home?
This is just perfect. Did you just not see me here at all?
You were going the wrong way in the first place.
Okay, calm down. I need license and insurance from both of you.
My husband is gonna freak.
Yeah, well, so's my mom, so thanks for that.
Hey, I'm on my way to my last final now.
Great. We'll be there in 30 minutes. Will you be ready to go when you're done with your test?
I still have a little packing to do.
Sarah!
Mom, I didn't have time to pack last night. I had to study. This is a really tough class.
Sarah, you know we have to be at the party by 3, and there might be snow coming.
Mom, I gotta go. I'm running late. I'll see you soon. I love you. Bye.
Wait, what were we studying late last night, girlfriend? Mixology?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Hey,
Shots fired. Longfellow Hall. Living, Whalen, and Route.
There you are.
Take the shot, Chief. Take the shot.
This had better be important. Where? Danny, come on. Injuries? What about the shooter? Who's on the scene? Okay, get a hold of tactical. Call for mutual aid. Then make that perimeter wide. I'll be there in 10 minutes.
Okay, everyone, put your bags away. Please remember to put your names on your test. You'll have an hour for this exam.
How's Randy's relationship with his parents?
I'm not sure. I know he's been a troubled kid since middle school.
I'm sorry, I have to go. There's been some sort of shooting at the university. Agent Simmons will stay?
yeah. I'm sorry, I have to go too.
Can we get news on that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Call the president's office. Tell them to put out an incident alert. I want it out on all social media. and I want everyone waved away from East Campus. I need to take this. Give me some good news, Mary.
I'm so sorry, I just got the word. I'm en route. How can we help?
I've got 1 and possibly 2 shooters, and I've only got 8 sworn on day shift. I haven't talked to Wilson at State Police, but I'm gonna need bodies.
I can send you tactical and evidence teams and agents for interviews too, if that helps.
Send whatever you can. I'll see you there. Jesus.
Mary, what do you have?
Sir, I just got off the phone with Carl Stan, the new chief at Appomattox.
How bad is it? What's he need?
There's at least 1 shooter and multiple casualties.
We'll put you on speaker.
The chief only has a few on shift, so he asked if we could send tactical, evidence collection, and agents for interviews.
He'll need media help and victim assistance, too.
Tell the chief we'll send 2 evidence teams, tactical and agents on the way. Have you spoken to headquarters yet?
Yes, sir. I confirmed with SIOC that there was a shooter and that we'd have someone on scene shortly.
Mary, Metz and his people will be on their way to you shortly.
Sir, I'll connect up with evidence and get them going too.
Good. Pull 3 crim squads in the JTTF and get them rolling along to help with interviews. We can always send people home if we don't need them.
Yes, sir.
Don will stay here and coordinate with SIOC. Headquarters will want to have a critical incident conference call soon to see what assets we might want to mobilize and support. Lavelle, call me when you know more. I'm on my way there.
Yes, sir. I'll be there in about 5.
Where is he? Where is he?
We're going from 1 to 2.
Stop!
Help me! Help me! Help me!
We have breaking news of a shooting on the Appomattox University campus. Now, all we know right now is that students are reporting through social media that shots have been fired in at least 1 building on campus. There's also reports of multiple injuries. It is unclear at this time if there's 1 or more shooters.
We have initial reports of a shooting on the Appomattox University campus. We know this week marks the end of final exams before students head home for winter break.
Come on, Sarah, pick up, pick up, pick up, pick up, pick up.
As you can see, it is still very chaotic. There
Oh
are
my
dozens of
God.
students coming out of
We have so many graduates there.
We don't have a plan for something like this. It would be a nightmare.
Police and fire train through this all the time. They can help you put a plan together.
Now, we want to remind you that this is all unconfirmed information. The university and campus police have not yet responded to our calls.
It's Cam Wilson. Thanks. Hey, Vince. Fred. What's the status, Denise?
We have a shooter down. Dave Whalen's been hit, but he's coming out under his own power with Lynette. We know we have injured kids inside Longfellow Hall, and there are unconfirmed reports of a second shooter and possible bullet strikes in the science building.
Vince, can you get that checked out? Sure, I'm on it. Can you get someone else to do it? I want all the commanders here with me. Right. Fred, what do you have?
I've got 20 troopers inbound from Division 2, and I can get more if you need them.
Great. Clarence?
Right. Got 2 ambulances on site. I have more on the way. Command post is 10 minutes out.
Good. We'll set up unified command here. Do you have tactically trained EMS?
I do.
Good. We'll use them. Fred, can your people take them inside?
I can give you 3 troopers right now. We can set up tactical over there.
Okay, that'll be great. Hey, Mary, what do we have from the FBI?
Tactical is beginning to arrive.
Well, I guess we all get to go home then. Okay, Vince, come on.
It's your show, Carl. Vince, we're here to support.
Look, we're going to need all the help we can get. My people are just now getting the long guns out of the lockdown.
Evidence and a bunch of agents should also be here within the hour, but you've got a hell of a traffic problem back there.
Okay, let's get a clean road in and out for the ambulances, and let's get this lot cleared for Unified Command.
Got it.
Okay?
She's still not answering.
Call 911.
It's busy.
Can't come this way! I'm sorry! Back up!
Appomattox PD, Kim. Yes, ma'am. Is this an emergency?
Yes, ma'am. We are aware of the situation.
We're currently experiencing a university emergency. Would you be able to call back?
Is your life in danger?
Are you in danger?
Can you hold, please?
Could you hold, please?
Can you hold, please?
Yes. Is this an emergency?
Number 24, can you give me your location? Is Thompson near you? Jake, we've got students calling from inside the building, parents, the media, and I can't answer the phones and handle the radio.
I've already had 2 women call who think their son's the shooter.
Track down the chief and let him know we're overwhelmed here.
On it.
Appomattox PD, Spears, can you hold, please?
Hi, guys. Chuck Metz, how can we help?
Henry Collins, I need 2 more to go in with the EMS. Can you do that?
Absolutely. How's your radio operability?
I'm with county.
Okay. Suggest we put your county guys on separate teams. We'll do the same?
You gotta be kidding. We haven't trained with these guys.
It's a big building. We have to have comms to do this right.
Right, the training's the same everywhere you go. If you're number 1 in line, you're 1. If you're 2, you're 2. Come on, let's do this.
Fred, who are they?
Harbin County, I think. Was self-deployed.
Denisa, find a staging area for all the stray cats. See if you can find their commanders and send them over here.
Got it, Chief.
Chief, dispatch is overwhelmed. They can't get any calls out. Couldn't reach you.
Give me an hour and we can have an 800 number set up for victims and families. That'll take some pressure off.
We'll do it.
We can also get you some media people to help manage your communications.
That is not my top priority.
Look, the sooner you talk to the press, the quicker you'll stem the panic.
Denisa, do you copy?
Yes, Chief.
The FBI is going to give us an 800 number to help with the victims and families. They're also going to give us some media support. Can you coordinate with their press people?
Roger that, Chief.
It's my wife. Stay with me and take messages. Don't bother me unless it's important. Tell Judy I'm okay, but I can't talk to her right now.
Yes, sir.
Status?
A shooter is down, boss, but they're chasing reports of a second one. We have multiple casualties, more than a dozen.
Who's running Unified Command?
Sir Carl Stan, chief of the campus police, former Newark PD. Very competent, but he lacks capacity. Vince Brittany, sheriff. Clarence Thompson, fire. Fred Wilson, state police. Everyone's leaning forward. Brittany's making it a bit of a pissing match.
That's Vince.
He's a good man, though. I've worked with him.
Chief?
Chief, I'm Ron Zarnecki.
Chief Thompson.
Wilson, sir.
Chief, I know you've been working with Agent Lavelle, but is there anything else you need from us?
Yeah, you can shoot that damn thing down.
Well, I don't think I can shoot that down, but we can certainly clear the airspace. Lavelle, call SIOC.
Thanks, Ron.
This is live picture coming in. We're seeing it just as you're seeing it for the first time. So many students are coming out of this building in a panic. Many of these students are simply running for cover, hands up, or just running to get out.
They tell us there was a shooting in Longfellow Hall. Someone opened fire on students taking final exams. There's a lot we don't know right now. People did manage to flee Longfellow Hall. One of them was Amy Alexander. Amy, what happened?
I was finishing my psych exam, and I came out and I saw these two guys, and they were just shooting at everybody down the hall. And
That's unlikely.
I ran in the other direction, but
What?
I think they're
Well, in 15 years, we've had maybe 2 incidents with multiple shooters. Really? Cops show up in street clothes wanting to help, and they carry a gun. People see them and think they're the bad guys. Early information is often inaccurate.
What about the perimeter, Vince?
State has the wide perimeter, Carl. My people are dealing with campus traffic.
Okay, good. Clarence, what about the casualties?
We're still moving wounded out of the building. We've set up casualty collection on the north lot. Our preliminary is 10 dead, 25 wounded, most of which have already been transported to Central Hospital.
Okay. Victim assistance.
We're helping set up a family assistance center in the gym. Headquarters is looking at securing financial and other resources for victims.
Good. What about witness interviews?
We're setting up in Stevens Hall. We have buses taking kids over there. The FBI is helping us handle the interviews. There's hundreds.
Understood. The long-term plan?
We're going to need to talk about manpower to sustain this investigation.
Well, that's a big lift.
Yeah, but it's critical.
Okay, we meet back here in 1 hour to talk about that. What about the press conference plan, Fred?
Carl, you should be the face of this thing. This is your campus, your crime scene.
I hate talking to the press.
I know, Carl, but I have to agree. This first one should be yours. Now, I can handle it if you really don't want to, but we do need someone who's going to be good with the press.
You only have to make a short statement now, and we expect your university president and the mayor will want to say something too. We can help your people with that. Sir, we have Agent Schmidt working with Officer Larimore on talking points and setting up the press area.
She's been doing this for 10 years. She can walk you through the plan. It'll take 15 minutes.
Chief, uniform.
Okay.
I was just walking into my classroom, and we heard noises out in the hallway.
What kind of noises?
Loud popping noises. So I went.
He had a hoodie up over his head, and it was really in the shadow, so I didn't get.
I just saw a lot of people running around, 2 big bangs, and I was just really scared in the moment. Didn't know what was going on.
To provide you with the most accurate and timely information. How did we find her? What are we doing? So I will be that person that's going to make sure you get that information the best that we can.
She's 5'5", I don't know, 125 pounds.
She's 120 pounds.
Okay. Now, do you know what class she was planning on attending this morning?
Yes, it was chemistry, I believe.
Okay, so she was attending chemistry. Now,
Tom, Beverly, we're Rosemary's parents. Remember you? Have you seen Rosemary yet? No.
We haven't seen Sarah either.
got lucky. C just gave us a positive hit on quick capture. Our shooter's Raymond Nichols from Omaha, Nebraska, a former student. Dropped out of school last year but was still living in town.
Okay.
Let's try that.
Sir, we found him.
Great.
One assault charge in his home state of Nebraska, resulting in a restraining order. That's his parents' address.
Call Omaha. Let's get some agents out there. Hey, Don. The parents are in Omaha. We should have something for you soon.
Roger that.
Do you need any bomb tech support?
No, sir.
Stacy, victim assistance.
Sir, the 800 number is up and running. We received emergency funding from DOJ to assist with victims and families, and 4 of our rapid deployment team members are on the scene to help set up the Family Assistance Center.
Denise, media.
Don's office already has its public affairs specialist on site. We'll be sending 2 additional, one from Boston, one from LA, to help with national media and long-term needs.
Thank God you're okay.
Have you seen Rosemary? Her parents are here too.
Good afternoon. I'm Carl Stan, the Appomattox University Chief of Police. Behind me are County Sheriff Bertani, State Police Commander Wilson, Fire Chief Thompson, and FBI Special Agent in Charge Zernecki. We also have the University President and the Mayor with us. At approximately 9:45 a.m. today, a 21-year-old male former university student opened fire on individuals in and around Longfellow Hall. I can confirm we currently have 10 deceased and approximately 25 wounded. The wounded have been transported to Central Hospital. I can confirm that 2 police officers responded to the sound of gunfire within minutes and engaged the shooter, killing him. These officers saved countless lives today. We've identified the shooter and will release the name pending family notification. We've established a toll-free number and urge those looking for information on loved ones to call for guidance and assistance. This is an active investigation, and I will provide you information as soon as I can. Our university website and social media feeds will post everything we say here. Although we have received reports of a second shooter, we have no evidence to support this. And I want to assure you that we are confident that the campus is safe and secure. We have a lot of work to do. We'll return here in 90 minutes to provide you with an update. Our deepest sympathies go out to the families and loved ones who are dealing with this tragedy. Our entire community mourns this senseless loss of life. Thank you.
Our agents found Nichols' parents. They're cooperating fully. Tough day.
Yeah, tough. Not done yet.
I'm Robert Anderson, Executive Assistant Director of the FBI. Throughout my nearly 30 years in law enforcement, beginning as a Delaware State Trooper and later as a special agent, I've seen a wide range of threats to our nation. One of the fastest growing threats have been active shooter incidents. Between 2000 and 2013, the FBI identified 160 active shooter cases in the United States, and the rate of these incidents continues to rise. Our methods of responding to these traumatic, fast-paced events have changed dramatically. The film you just watched shows how it saves lives when responding officers take swift and decisive action. It also shows how the proper management of these events is crucial to delivering the best care for the wounded, for processing the scene, and providing assistance to victims and their families. We've asked law enforcement executives from around the country who have lived through these events to share their experiences and lessons learned with us.
We had 10 bodies in the theater. We had a number of people dead at the hospital. We had untold numbers of people shot.
Obviously, you're going to get emotion when there's such a loss of life, especially such precious children that were lost that day.
There was a total of 19 students that were stabbed, and they were puncture wounds or slashings.
We received a call within 60 seconds of the incident that a shooting had occurred in the airport.
I was grabbed by a detective from the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. He informed me that there was an active shooter at the Washington Navy Yard.
Hassan fired about 146 shots inside and 76 shots outside.
Well, the shooting itself was over in 5 seconds. A total of 5 rounds were fired.
I was shot 3 times and was one of the most critically injured survivors from the shooting.
I responded to Sandy Hook Elementary School for the shooting that occurred there. When I first arrived on scene, there was a lot of chaos with, just law enforcement throughout the area. The area was pretty well jammed with cars, so it was difficult to get in and out of there.
The difference between a military base and civilians is that it seemed most of the soldiers were trying to engage and trying to help, and so they're running towards the gunfire.
It was an absolutely chaotic scene. I also know that the fire service, they were overwhelmed outside the theater when they arrived, and hundreds of panicked and some injured people descended upon the fire folks, the fire crews. If you run into an event where there is mass casualties, your absolute first obligation is to eliminate the threat. If the best available information you have as you respond is that the shooter is on the 4th floor killing people, then you got to get to the 4th floor, and you got to get there in a hurry. You can't be doing a slow clear of the 1st floor. That may require you to step over people who are critically wounded to address the threat.
Our big concern that day was to get into that school as fast as we could. All 3 of us had our bulletproof vests in our cars. None of us put them on.
When I arrived at the scene, the shooting had stopped, but the chaos was still there. Not knowing how the individual who came with a gun got to the airport, whether there was a vehicle that was parked in one of our lots with an explosive device in it or some other or something else, and whether or not there was another individual that was laying off that may start opening fire once your resources begin to converge on the one terminal.
And then immediately after we arrived, somebody said second shooter because we heard gunshots, and unfortunately they were practicing a funeral about 4 blocks away, so they're firing blanks.
In numerous situations, you will have reports of second and third shooters, and as we know, this is oftentimes not the case, but as we sometimes have responders, first responders who are not wearing law enforcement gear, they may be mistaken for second and third shooters.
I remember feeling for a very short time that what we had here was almost overwhelming with the situation we faced. And with our officers, there weren't enough. I got on the police radio and I began to call for assistance from local police departments, surrounding police departments. We had crime scene coming. Pennsylvania State Police came.
I made 2 phone calls right away. The first phone call I made was to my city manager, my boss. I told him what was going on, and then I picked up the phone and I called the Denver field office of the FBI. I called the SAC, and I explained what we had and that I needed every bit of resources that they could bring to bear.
Much kudos to the FBI because we did not even call the FBI, but they showed up. The supervisor agent came up to me and wanted it to be very clear that he wasn't there or they weren't there to take over the investigation, that they would help us in any way they could. State police was the same way. Establish those relationships with fellow law enforcement agencies from the federal to the local levels, because you will need it, and that way you don't become overwhelmed with the task at hand.
You had to have that difficult conversation. That's not always easy to have. Who's in charge? While there was a lot of people there, and very high-level people, everybody was there for the right reason, and they realized, okay, state police are in charge of the criminal investigation, but we're all going to bring whatever we can and resources together to get the job done.
We have crossover with the fire EMS people very often, and they do come under our unified command, and there's no issue at all. When we get to the scene of calls, we all understand what we're doing here.
And the unified command set up in the library with the FBI and the state police, and the governor even came, having everybody there to discuss and lay out the plans on how to recover the evidence, electronic evidence and everything like that, things started to fall in place.
Before you could even realize what was going on, we had over 500 officers in our airport looking for work and looking for something to do.
We did have a whole lot of cops show up, and we had to figure out what to do with them. But that is a priority in your leadership, is to make sure that the folks who respond check in, get assignments, or go to a standby area until you need them.
The fire department does a very nice job of rolling into incidents. They come generally from a fire station. They park nicely. They put their tarps out, and they are very, very organized. Police officers don't work that way. They will park on lawns. They will park on top of each other. They're cattywampus. They just want to get to to wherever it is they need to go.
To keep the pathway for vehicular traffic for emergency vehicles, specifically ambulances who are coming there to get the victims out, played a critical part in getting these victims to the ambulances and to the hospitals, to the trauma units, to get them help.
It took more hours to clear off the central terminal area of emergency vehicles, police and fire and others, FBI vehicles also, than it really should have. In fact, we couldn't even find the owners and drivers of some of the vehicles, and we ultimately were towing police vehicles to a parking structure just to get them out of the way.
If there's a lesson for the American Police Service and the Fire Service, it is that we have to be better at getting to the wounded with critical care and getting them out of warm zones.
Our ability to be able to provide force protection in a relatively short period of time, to be able to have officers taking the injured to a marshalling area in that warm zone and being able to have the firefighters treat the individuals is a relatively new concept.
We did what they call a warm zone clearing. We were at the patient's side by video. Again, we have this all on video within 4.5 to 5 minutes of the call. Even the trauma surgeons have told us that made the difference, at least in one of the persons surviving this event.
Our police officers managed to locate some buses from the local bus authority, and we convinced hundreds of these witnesses to get on buses and go to a local high school and be interviewed.
There's 23,000 people in the airport. About 1,000 of them were in the terminal when the incident occurred and became part of our witness management issues. I was able to put one of my assistant chiefs in charge of that particular aspect of it because it was a large piece to handle.
I would say well over 100 people needed interviewed. The FBI, state police, and other people went out and interviewed these victims at the hospitals. But without the local police departments helping us, we would quickly have been overwhelmed.
I think that one of the biggest roles for a police department in the aftermath of an event like this is managing the victims and providing every possible service to them. We mobilized the resources of the victim advocate community in Colorado, by the way, including the victim advocates who worked for the Denver field office of the FBI, and we assigned to every family a victim advocate to manage their issues and concerns.
And you have to always be honest with them and always keep them first and foremost in how you do things going forward.
No one can be prepared for the media crush that comes with this event. I got back to my office at 5:36 in the morning, and I see 187 unanswered phone calls. My PIOs couldn't use their 2 phones for about 12 hours because all they did was ring.
The media is going to be such a critical part of what's going on with you. Give them what you can, and don't allow them or don't give them the time to create the story.
All our decisions with regard to how to handle the media, a critical advisor and a partner in handling that was the SAC from Denver and his press expert. We also had in the room for those critical decisions the district attorney, and the United States attorney was very helpful. And by the way, the attorney general for Colorado was there.
Our incident occurred after the Boston bombing at the Boston Marathon. They relied heavily on social media and Twitter and pushing a lot of information out. We did that also, but we didn't address the reporters and their cameras as quickly as we probably should have. In most cases, there's a tremendous amount of information and lessons learned on the totality of an incident, and that's where it's critical that every agency complete a detailed after-action report. It's going to be painful, I can promise people. Get ready for that pain, but in the end, it's part of our duty, and it's the right thing to do.
If there is a criticism, and it came out in the after-action report, it's that we didn't establish unified command between police and fire early enough. It would have been better had we had the person in command of fire and the person in command of police meeting face-to-face and sharing information sooner than we did. That didn't occur to around the 50-minute mark. It would have been nice if it occurred sooner, and it's a fair criticism.
The one thing that I would have done differently going forward would have been, prior to us closing down that command post, had a clear plan for everybody involved going forward, because there was definitely some loss of communication for a short time period for the couple weeks following.
I got caught up into a lot of the operational issues that were going on that particular day, and essentially I wanted to play. I wanted to be a part of the unified command. I wanted to be a part of that particular incident. What I learned was I needed to step back. I needed to step out of the unified command and be more of an agency executive, and to deal with the much broader airport issues that were there. If I had to do it all over again, I would give a press conference within the first 45 minutes of the incident. We clearly had an understanding of what happened by then.
I'm a passionate believer after this event that cops have to be trained, that there's an inevitability to this, that they have to have a mindset that this absolutely could happen to you and your agency.
To officers entering a space or a room where there are victims, I would say, please try to acknowledge us, even if you have to step over us, because there's just a lot of fear on our end. And so for you to stop and say, I see you, I'm going to come back for you, is very empowering. Keep saying your name. The only reason I remember my paramedics and Patrick's name are because they kept repeating to me. And there's a sense of, I think, connection and humanity in that was very hopeful. You're giving us hope at that point. Most people's interaction with police is being, I guess, stopped at a traffic stop or hearing negative media accounts. But I can't deny that these 40 people ran into this building and saved us. I'm going to get emotional, sorry. So there's nothing but gratitude.
So a number of different issues popped up, and I've watched this video a number of times, and every time I watch it, there's some other little tidbit of information that I pull out of it. Just basically, I think I owe it to you to tell you that the response for law enforcement has changed since Columbine. Traditionally, up until that point, if you had an incident that was critical, road patrol, your officers, deputies on scene would surround and contain that perimeter and then call out SWAT, and SWAT would be the group that would go search. What we learned the hard way from Columbine is we can't wait. There's lives being lost while we sit and hold a perimeter. So the whole paradigm shifted for us, and we trained nationally, individually as agencies, for the same type of response. We train active shooter. And it's kind of an interesting concept that you have to enter a place that's actively dangerous and step over people that are injured. It kind of goes against the realm of wanting to help people. And they illustrated that in the video a couple times. They spoke about it at the end, but that's the job. The job is to eliminate that threat. So either arrest them, have them surrender, or literally take their life to stop them from taking other lives. It's a heck of a responsibility. Now, when we first learned, we were learning these 4-person kind of militaristic formations, diamonds and wedges, and different ways to clear buildings in a group of 4. So it wasn't like, okay, I'm the first guy, I go in and I just save the show and put my Superman cape on. It was wait for 3 other partners and then go in as a team. Well, we learned a little bit more that we can't wait for 4. Some agencies don't have 4 people. It takes a while to get 4 people together. So we started training 2. When I left Colorado, I trained every one of my university officers in a new subject of single officer response to active shooter. So yeah, take the Superman cape on it and go towards that gunfire. And there's a duty to protect that innocent life from being lost. So that's kind of changed within our industry, and I don't know where it's going to continue to go, because it's no less than one. The media, some of this misinformation, disinformation, all of these incidents are dynamic and flowing. So one thing they talked about was the multiple shooters and why those reports are, because every off-duty cop that ain't working that heard it, that he or she is running to the scene. I've seen those on critical incidents. They will do it. It's just in their DNA. We're programmed a little bit different. So there's misinformation. Not saying that there's not ever two. We saw that in San Bernardino, just close to home here last year, a husband and wife team. So it can happen, but historically it's generally one person. So as that report starts unwinding, they talk about hot zone, warm zone, cold zone type of stuff. Traditionally, everywhere I've ever worked until this state, fire EMS, and I'll make fun of my firefighter friends because they make fun of me, the brave firemen don't go into the scene until we declare it to be cold, meaning it's safe for them to come in. So what has happened in the industry, they've learned also, we can't do that. California is very progressive. I was very pleasantly surprised and pleased that fire practices with law enforcement regularly to go into warm zones. We've addressed that traditionally in other agencies I've been at by creating these TEMS team, tactical emergency medical teams, that would train with your tactical operators, and they would regularly get with your SWAT teams and train, and then they would be the only ones that would be allowed to go into these scenes. We've practiced in different places how to get those victims out to where they can be treated. You heard from the survivor of Virginia Tech at the very end. A lot of people, it's that critical hour, but those minutes that you have before you lose all the blood in your system are critical. So law enforcement now, we're issuing things like tourniquets to law enforcement officers. A lot of the military technology, a lot of the military survival lessons that we've learned from these different conflicts we've been involved in have taught us how to save life and how to save our own lives. So it's become standard issue for a lot of the stuff. The traditional police uniform, as you see it, it's going to change. You're going to start seeing police officers nationally looking different, wearing things that look more militaristic. An interesting part of that, there's the whole perception of militarizing your police departments. I went to the debrief in the Chiefs Conference this year in San Diego, and the chief from Orlando, who's had a very busy year, for those keeping score, he addressed one of the issues about defending the stuff he's got from the military. When they had the Pulse nightclub shooting, one of the officers, you can probably Google it and see the image, had a tactical ballistic helmet on, was shot right here in the head, and there's a wicked dent in that helmet, and this guy has a Wile E. Coyote type of black and blue lump on his head, but he's alive. And the chief basically laid it out to us as fellow law enforcement chiefs. He says, all of this militaristic stuff we're putting in the hands of our officers are defensive, protective measures. Armored vehicles. Armored vehicles don't hurt people, they protect people. Bulletproof vests and gear, Kevlar helmets, protect people. They don't do any harm to our society. Our duty is to save lives, and that's what law enforcement as a generality in the profession does. So that said, there's another scene in there too where they talk about the different ways media comes out. This day and age of instantaneous news via social media, everybody's got a blog. The disinformation channels are huge. So I question to you as a professor, as a teacher, as an instructor, you're in a classroom, you're going to put on a test like they did, and all of a sudden your students start grabbing for their phones. My first instinct as an instructor would be, hey, put your phone down, pay attention to me, I'm important here. Maybe you should shift and go, what have you heard? What's going on? What do you know? I remember sitting in a classroom in Connecticut in a police ethics class when 9/11 happened. And this is kind of at the brink of when phones started. Phones weren't the norm. It was not the way to get messages. And I remember sitting in this police ethics class taught by a retired deputy chief and looking at students in my class starting to look at their phones, and I was offended. How dare you disrespect this professor and start looking at your phones? Well, it wasn't until he got pulled out of the room, they closed class, and I turned my phone on and started getting recalled. I mean, at the initial point that happened, no one knew the extent of how many planes were in the sky, what was the extent of the attack, and our entire agency was called in. We were very close in proximity to the New York area and had a municipal airport. So that kind of change and the way the relationships with the media and the way the media is fed the information is critical. So I'm really pleased to tell you that Susan and Andrew have been great partners, and they've got a great grasp on media relations. They're doing a good job for the college here, getting the messages out. We're going to take a 5-minute break. I'll entertain a question or two now if you want to address what we've seen so far. Yes, ma'am.
So you just mentioned phones, and I have the luxury of having a phone in my classroom,
okay,
but I do not bring my cell phone in.
Okay.
So would that alert system contact the phone in my classroom, which is L203? So I repeat that.
Please.
So Jennifer asked if, let me reiterate, does the classroom telephone send emergency messages if she doesn't bring her cell phone to class?
We've used it. I don't know if we've ever used it for an emergency alert before. We've used it to test fire alarms. I know we've made campus-wide announcements through them. The voice over internet phones have the capability. I don't know the answer to that. I can find that out. If it's not, it's probably a very good suggestion. The only hesitation I would have along using the phones in the classroom to make announcements are, who else is hearing that? I mean, can we give information on what we're doing based on and educate the person that's doing us harm? But I think the weighing would be the general good outweighs that one individual that might be doing us harm. Yes, ma'am.
Tagging on that, does it go through the regular phone system? So I'm only at a desk that has a regular phone.
So the question was also asked if it goes through the regular phone system, like we have in our offices and
Right,
et cetera.
The regular, 4-digit.
The regular 4-digit.
On a public desk.
At the public desk.
Yeah.
And that's why the rave is critical, because you can have an email alert, a phone alert, a text alert. There's social media. So depending on who you are and what your mechanism of receiving information, it's hitting everything all at once. It's going to pump it out all over different mediums. Yes, ma'am.
There was an event that took place a few months, like 2 months ago at a residential area.
Okay.
Here, and I was in the math center and they made an announcement saying we're good to go, it's been taken care of. So in places like the math center and stuff like that, we did hear it over the phone.
Okay. Right before the break, we had a incident right off our campus. Santa Maria Police had a barricaded subject on a SWAT call out. You know, again, I kind of alluded to some of the things that happened and fate hitting itself. Having this partnership and relationships that they stressed in the video, that was one of my primary critical areas of concern when I got here, is to meet and develop these relationships with other agencies. In Santa Barbara County, we have a monthly meeting through all chiefs throughout the entire county, to include sheriffs. We got Secret Service reps, our FBI reps are in there. So we at least once a month come together and discuss different things that are addressing our agencies. The relationship part of that, that day that incident happened, our partners at the Santa Maria Police asked if we could use facilities to practice do their SWAT training that day. And I arranged through Rex Vandenberg to use some of the South Campus buildings, the old Police Academy building. So just so happens at the moment that this individual barricaded and did this domestic violence act against his other half, the SWAT team was all dressed out a block away from us. So luck of the draw. I attended a debriefing from the SWAT team that responded to Virginia Tech's shooting. That team was training that day right near campus. Interestingly enough, those that historically remember the Virginia Tech, it came out as a domestic shooting. They thought originally that there was an individual that killed their domestic partner, and it was. The individual shot someone at a dormitory and then went to the building, the school building, and started barricading to do his larger event. They sent that SWAT team to that domestic homicide. It's not a normal response for a SWAT team. So I don't know who, made that decision on that day, but when the shots started ringing out, that SWAT team was on campus. So yes, there was a carnage, but again, I think it was limited because that fate intervened and put the right people in the right place to try to stop some of it. So I've seen example after example of that. That incident that we had here was a great learning lesson for us, because literally I'm driving in at 7:45 and I'm looking at a whole SWAT team dressed out in a command post, and this didn't look like training. And again, having the relationships with their commander, Commander Hansen, he's kind of a nationally renowned expert in the area of SWAT, and he's on scene, and I have a friendship with him, and we got to, stand by him and witness his operation of his command post. The initial reports that we received was this individual had someone against their will. She escaped the house, which was true. He chased her out, and we were initially reported was running across our campus with a gun, trying to end her life and anybody's who got in her way. So that's our initial report. So we went into a shelter-in-place order for this portion of the campus. Well, we quickly ascertained that the first 2 Santa Maria police officers that came to the house saw him outside of the house. They saw him. He ran in the house. They held the perimeter on the front. The other guy went around the back, and we were 99% certain that he was contained in the house, and inevitably that was the case. So for us, a horrible incident for our partners and this victim of the crime, but a great learning opportunity for us to work with our partners and test, since I've been here, the first time our rave alert system, and it kind of propelled some of the discussion points that we had today. Let's take, you guys want 5 minutes, 10 minutes? You tell me. 5. Okay, so 10 of come back, and Agent Keith's going to pick up the second part of this. Every time we're going to get started again. I'm going to introduce my partner, Brian Keith, the Protective Security Agent with Homeland Security. Among the things Brian has done, he's been a law enforcement professional for 23 years. He just did the Rose Bowl Rose Parade, the security for that. We were talking yesterday, one of the things that his agency is going to be responsible for is putting barricades on the marathon route for
the Los Angeles Marathon.
The Los Angeles Marathon. So marathon's 26.2 miles. Imagine having the barricade roadways that long so vehicles can't do some of the things that we're now concerned with people doing harm with vehicles. So without further, Brian.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here this morning. I've been working with Chief Grahowski here for the last few months. As he mentioned earlier, myself and my partner were out here a couple of months ago. It seems like a couple of months ago, but it was only December. And we're helping out here with the campus, helping the chief and his department to enhance the security efforts currently underway. So I am glad to be here. My session will focus on 3 different things with regards to workplace violence and active shooter. I'm going to talk about preparedness and some of the things that you guys can do in addition to what the chief spoke about. I'm going to talk about response, general role that you guys play, things that you can do and things that you can expect to do in working with local law enforcement agencies such as the chief and others that may be responding, as well as some tools that you guys can use to help you prepare. So we'll get into that shortly. I also have some handout materials. Please sign in. That allows me to have a good contact roster for those of you that are here, that if there's any follow-up material that I can send out, I'll have a good point of contact. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. We also have some active shooter preparedness flyer handouts here as well. Please take one of those because that's kind of your gateway to getting additional information of things that I'm going to talk about this morning. A lot of it is links that are on our website, so if you get one of those flyers, I'll have all that information. So I'll briefly talk about myself just quickly, as Chief gave me an introductory background there. I've been in this position with DHS since 2009 here in Los Angeles. I started out in law enforcement back on the East Coast, working for the federal government, working for NASA Security Police Team, and then worked my way over to Department of Justice as a weapons and armor technician, and came out to California right before 9/11 happened. Working on counterterrorism programs for the governor's office. And before I had this position, I was Deputy Director for Critical Infrastructure Protection for the state of California. So with critical infrastructure protection, we look at everything. We look at everything from universities and public schools to shopping malls to nuclear power plants. So we focus on all 16 critical infrastructure sectors. Our job or our role is to help you guys secure your facilities so that you can do your jobs and your students can and have an environment that they can learn in. So what I'm going to talk about today, I'm going to go over preparedness, response, and recovery. I'm going to talk about the overview and characteristics of an active shooter incident. I'll talk about active shooter materials, the handouts. I'll talk about additional training that the Department of Homeland Security can provide to you. A lot of it is self-paced training that you can go through your own, go online and go through your own pace. And then we'll talk about some additional workshops and webinars in addition to today that we offer as well. So I'll briefly go over an active shooter characteristic. DHS basically categorizes an active shooter as anyone who may be attacking a workplace, a school, or hospital, or could be any place. There's no one-size-fits-all situation for an active shooter, someone that's committing this terrible act. And I want to focus on that for a couple minutes because I'm going to go through some of the FBI numbers. You guys saw the video, but I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit further. There's no one-size-fits-all. Within the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen Active shooter situations happen at schools, colleges, beauty salons, movie theaters, shopping malls, you name it. Any place that you can go to where there's an open environment, where you can go and do things either recreationally or a commercial environment. We've seen those become places for active shooter incidents. So I'm going to focus on that a little bit when I talk about the statistics and some of the information you might find alarming. So what is an active shooter? Most active shooter situations are unpredictable and evolve rather quickly. The FBI study that was mentioned in the video earlier looked at about 130, 140 cases that have happened over a 10-year period from 2002 to 2012. And they kind of studied all these active shooter incidents, but they basically looked at, the average time that these incidents would last was about 12 minutes. 12 minutes from the time the active shooter starts shooting until it's over with, so they evolve very quickly. An individual engaged or actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined or populated area. That's what DHS's definition is of an active shooter. In most cases, there's no pattern to the way the shooter chooses the victims. Usually they're going for high body count, and whoever happens to be in their way, unfortunately, ends up being a victim. Preparedness and awareness are key to survival. We'll talk about specific things that you guys can do to prepare yourself and to make yourself more aware of your surroundings. So, we briefly mentioned the 2012 Joint Intelligence Bulletin that came out. Periodically, the FBI and DHS will put out these joint bulletins to local law enforcement organizations. And they will talk about trends, tactics, and procedures that we are seeing across the country or overseas with what our bad guys are doing. And when I say bad guys, it doesn't necessarily have to be terrorists. It could be lone wolf. When we say lone wolf, we mean someone that is working independently of an organization, but they're still out there to do harm. This study, again, was about 150 cases that was conducted between 2002 and 2012. It included incidents where there were 3 or more individuals that were shot. Here's what they found. 51% of the cases, the active shooter died, death by cop. 43%, the active shooter committed suicide. 8% was shot or killed by other responders. 45%, the individual was arrested. 4% unidentified, we're not sure how they died. 96% were male, 96% acted alone. The most common identified motivations, 21% workplace retaliation. That's a pretty big amount. Keep that in mind as we go through this, because I'm going to talk about workplace violence and some of those pre-incident indicators that you guys can be on the lookout for. 14% domestic disputes. 7% academic retaliation by a current or former student. That's a good statistic for you guys to know. 40% no clear motivation revealed at all. So the chief covered some really good active shooter incidents. I don't mean really good as in it's good that they happened. I mean they were good incidents that we learned from. The lessons learned, the takeaways, those are the things that we need to pay attention to because that helps us prepare for future incidents. Last June, 49 people were killed, 53 injured in the Orlando nightclub shooting. I think that is the record holder right now. December 2nd, 2015, we had San Bernardino. Interesting story, I was working down in Port Hueneme when the San Bernardino incident happened. And I was attending a port meeting. My partner, Kelly Wilson, she covers San Bernardino County and San Diego County, immediately called me. She said, I don't know if you've heard, but there's an incident going on in San Bernardino. She says, I'm en route to the command post. She says, I need your help. make calls, do whatever you need to do, but I'm en route to the command post. When she got there, this kind of falls into line with what the chief was saying in the FBI video about stray cats. She immediately met up with the San Bernardino County Sheriff, point of contact there, who had established incident command, and he basically identified her as the first fed on the on site there, and told her your job is to rally up all the stray cats, especially the federal entities, because what will happen during an incident like this is everyone wants to be a part of it. It's just like the chief was saying, if you're a badge toter and a gun toter, you're going to go downrange. You're going to want to be a part of that incident to stop the carnage. And so you had a lot of people self-deploying to this incident that really weren't part of the unified command, and they were just becoming part of the problem, not part of the solution. So her job was to kind of rally up all the federal entities that were coming inbound until the FBI could get there and determine if it was a terrorist incident or not. September 16, 2013, the Washington Naval Yard shooting. Really good lessons learned about that one. I'll talk about it a little bit later on in my presentation. In December 14th, Sandy Hook Elementary School. This was an unfathomable incident that happened back in 2012. 27 people killed, 20 of them children under the age of 7. Just unimaginable, just gut-wrenching. July 20th, 2012, 12 people killed out watching a movie, Batman premiere. November 5th, 2009, 13 people killed at Fort Hood Military Base. And then, of course, Virginia Tech back in 2007, which originally was the record holder. We had 32 people killed in that incident. So another way to break this down, the data, the FBI Joint Intelligence Bulletin, if we look at the location of the attacks, 40% happened at businesses, commercial businesses. 29% schools and universities, 19% happened at outdoor venues, and the remaining 12% was other types of facilities. Key takeaway here, average incident lasts 12 minutes. Average police response time could be 3 minutes at best. Does anyone know how quickly the body bleeds out?
Less than 3 minutes.
Less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes is the average, is about the time where your body will bleed out from an injury. So, getting back to what the chief talked about, being prepared and having tactical emergency medical services type training for staff is key, because when the first responders show up, they're going to step over bodies. They're on a search and destroy mission when they get there. They're there to take out that threat. So you will have people that are injured that could bleed out if they are not rendered first aid, and more than likely it's going to be one of you guys or another staff member that's going to have to render that first aid. That's why that type of training is critical. We'll get into some more of that a little bit later as well. Common catalyst or triggers observed in these incidents: loss of significant relationships. Could be a death in the family, could be a divorce, could be a breakup. Change in financial status. Loss of a job, changes in living arrangements, major adverse changes in life circumstances. Things that are out of your control, right? That are going to impact you, impact how you feel, how you react to others. Feelings of humiliation or rejection on the part of the shooter. And we see this a lot in schools. Bullying, right? When I was a kid, back in the 70s, bullying was done on the playground, right? You name calling, you handled it out on the playground. It's a different world now. It's all done in the cyberspace, texting, Facebook, Instagram. That's the way kids do it. You guys know this more than I do. That's the way it's done now. And that makes it even harder for the administrators to monitor that type of behavior. Okay, I'm going to play the first video here, and this is going to be about 2.5 minutes long. It's going to talk, really, it's going to focus on the lone wolf type incident that happens.
What do we want? Savior! And when do we want it? Now! What do we want? What do we want? Savior! What do we want? Savior! What do we want it? Now! What do we want? And when do we want it? Now!
A lot of good information on
What do we want?
Come on.
And when do we
Take
want
the flyer.
it? Savior!
Take the flyer. The air's getting worse every day. Just a couple miles up the road, that new plant is spewing pollution into the atmosphere, and nobody's doing anything about it.
The more vocal we are, the better chance we have of getting people to take notice.
No, you're wrong. These companies are not going to change. They don't care about the environment. All they care about is the bottom line. They need a serious wake-up call. If we really want to get our message out there, we got to take some serious action. No more letters. No more passing out flyers to people who just throw the stuff in the trash as soon as they walk around the corner. Nah.
What are you talking about, Ron?
I got a plan. Something that'll really work. You know, if I could just take out one of those companies, it'd be all over the news. They wouldn't forget about our cause.
You're scaring me.
Well, but you're in this just as much as I am.
Look, I'm all for cleaning up and making life a little better, but what you're talking about is something drastic.
Haven't you been listening to me? It's not worth handing out flyers. It's time to take some action. I'm sick of this. Nobody takes me seriously. I have something in mind. I'm tired of this. Something's got to be done. Please, it could be all over the news. Somebody's got to put a stop to this. I have something in mind. Something I know will work. If I could just take out one of these companies, and I've got a plan to take drastic steps. Not soon enough for me. These companies aren't going to change. Nobody will forget about our cause.
911, what is your emergency?
Now let's look out with a gun and he's shooting at us now.
Okay, so the video we just watched was on the lone wolf situation. Ron, the individual portrayed in the video, says he's got a plan. He's fed up. Nothing's working that he's doing. He's seeing that he doesn't really like what this company stands for, and he's going to do something about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we call pre-incident indicators, or things that you guys can look out for. Identifying and reporting criminal planning and preparatory acts by individuals that may be on their path to committing something like this. Suspicious activity. This is observed behavior that is reasonably indicative of pre-operational planning related to terrorism or any other criminal activity. So we teach another course. It's a 3-day course. We've got a couple coming up in February called Surveillance Detection. And the goal of that course is to teach the individuals how to spot someone conducting surveillance on a particular facility with intent to do harm. It's a great course, very time intensive. First 2 days are classroom. We'll talk about hostile surveillance points and how do you spot someone conducting surveillance. So for a campus, could be the individual sitting at the bus stop, and just at first glance they appear to be normal, but 3 buses have gone by and they haven't gotten on any of the buses. But they're not really interested in the buses. They're looking around at the people. They're looking at the security patrol. They're looking at how many times does a police officer come by over the course of an hour. They may be looking at the class schedules and where people gather after classes and assemble. So you got to keep an eye on your surroundings and what people are doing. Our course teaches people on situational awareness, what to focus on. I drive my wife crazy with this one all the time. When we go out, we go to a restaurant. I'm sure the chief is with me on this one. First thing I look for is I want to sit near the door, right? I want to be able to have an escape route when something happens because I've already got a plan in my head. I want to know where the back entrance is. And so my wife thinks I'm just not paying attention, I'm not living in the moment, but what I'm doing is I'm assessing the area that I'm going into, and I'm formulating my route, my plan. What am I going to do when something happens? And so the surveillance detection course teaches that and teaches you to spot individuals that may be out planning things, because we know that we can be successful in stopping one of these incidents if somebody sees it in the pre-operational planning phase. Because more than likely, bad guy who's planning to do something, they're not just going to go to a place they're not familiar with. They're going to make sure that they are familiar with that campus or that facility so that they will have the advantage to do the most damage that they can. And that's our chance to stop them. So things that we can be on the lookout for: breached or attempted intrusions, misrepresentation, people walking around saying they're not who they really are, theft, loss, or diversion, sabotage, tampering, vandalism, cyber attacks are huge right now, expressed or implied threat, testing or probing of security, we see a lot of that. Photography of areas that are not really tourist attractions, loading docks, things like that, security areas. Acquisition of expertise, people doing what we call social engineering. We always encourage folks, if they're leaving campus or the facility, either to go to lunch or for the day, remove your badge, take it off. Because if I'm a bad guy and I want to get the advantage on your facility, and I see that you've got a badge on or something that affiliates you with this organization, and I stop and start chit-chatting with you and say, hey, I'm an alumni there as well. That's a great college. Tell me a little bit more about it, and how many police officers do they have, and when do they go on patrol? That's me social engineering, right? But I'm really collecting information from you so that I can come back and do my dirty deed later. Identifying people in need of support. So this is critical. This kind of gets back to having some type of threat awareness or threat analysis. Some places have a rotational unit that they will establish at a college or a university, which could include teachers and staff, mental health counselors. But really, they're rotating out that responsibility, so it's not someone you have to hire full-time. But the purpose is to kind of have what we call in the federal government, we call employee assistance program. So-and-so is going through some life-changing or stressful situation. I've noticed their behavior has changed. Offer them counseling so they don't feel isolated and alone. So we'll go through the next video, which is about 4 minutes, a little over 4 minutes, and this one really keys in on the workplace violence scenario.
She can't take half of my money. I'm the one who worked for it. You're a lawyer. Do something about it. She's getting the house too? What are you, blind? Hey! This is my parking space.
Come on, Mark. I got here before you did.
Mark, there are plenty of other parking spaces back there.
Mind your own business. This is between me and her.
Look, you saw me use a turn signal.
It's ridiculous to get upset over a parking space. Jeez. Are you okay?
Yeah.
good luck at that presentation today.
Have a good day.
So what is eating Mark? He used to be one of the nicer guys around here.
I know. He's been really difficult to work with lately. The other day in a meeting, I heard he left in a huff, and last week at lunch, okay, I saw it. He totally flipped out because the waitress got his order wrong.
Well, I heard he was going through a really messy divorce.
Well, that's no reason to threaten your coworker, you know? We should go to HR.
I really don't want to do that. I don't want to spend my whole morning at HR. Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
I heard about what happened in the parking garage. Are you okay?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just not a great way to start your morning.
No kidding.
How did you hear?
Office gossip. But don't worry, I will take care of it, okay?
Thank you.
No problem.
Gotcha.
All right, see you.
See ya.
Bye.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thanks.
You wanted to see me?
Yeah, please have a seat.
I'll stand.
Would you mind closing the door, please? Mark, I heard about the incident today in the parking garage. I have to tell you, there have been some consistent complaints about your aggressive behavior, and that type of behavior is not acceptable here. Do you understand? I also need to speak with you about your performance lately. Your work quality's been very poor, and we've decided that we need to place you on a probationary period of 1 month. We'll be evaluating you weekly, and at the end of that period, if we don't see some significant improvement, then there will be some serious consequences. Mark, you could lose your job over this.
Fine.
Do you want to discuss this further? I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
No. Are we done here?
Yes, we're done.
This is it. I can't take this anymore.
Okay, so in this video here, excuse me, Mark is going through a messy divorce, so he's a little stressed out. And something very simple as someone cutting him off in the parking garage is kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And so we've got the HR department involved, and she calls Mark into the office. And what do you guys think about the way she handled that? I see some heads shaking in the back. Not good, right? We like showing this video because it's an idea. It's kind of a thing of what you would want to avoid, right? What you don't want to do. So do we have anyone from HR or admin, human resources? So this is good training for those folks as well, because they're probably going to be the individuals that are going to spot this type of individual first, because they're going to make that initial contact. If an individual's having a performance problem or someone reports them, usually HR is going to be the one, right, tasked out to give them some corrective action. Hey, you're having a problem. If it's not the supervisor, could be HR that might be getting rid of them, right? Could be firing them. And so guess who they're going to be pissed off at? And so in this case, our buddy Mark, he's had it. He went to the car, he got his gym bag, he's going to go to the gym and work out his stress, and he'll be back tomorrow and he'll be okay, right? No, not hardly. He's going to the car to get his gym bag full of guns, more than likely. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the individual violence process. As you saw in the Coming Storm video, the FBI agents at the Behavioral Science Analysis Unit talked about a process that these individuals go through. They just don't snap overnight. There's usually a buildup. There's usually some indicators. There's some things that are going on. So I'm going to walk through this 5-step process. The first one being some type of negative situation happens, right? Whether it's on a personal level, it's on a social level, political level, religious, or whatever. But there's a negative thing that happens in that individual's life that influences them to do something. That's when they're planting the seed. I don't like the way the company's doing business. I don't like these new policies and procedures that they're making us do. I don't like whatever. I'm going to do something about it. And then there's intense feelings that go with that initial reaction to that negative situation. Could be anger, could be hostility, retaliation, vengeance. That's why we always have a cool-off period, right? When there's a domestic incident. Ideas, that's when you plant that seed. Change is not possible in a peaceful way. Violence is the only way to solve this. And then planning. Now planning is key because that's what I just talked about. It could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years. But usually they will start to plan what they are going to do. Now with San Bernardino, what we saw with this case is that these individuals had become radicalized and they were planning to do an incident, not specifically on that day when it occurred, but they were planning on doing something later on. They were attending the holiday party that morning and something happened at that party that escalated their planning all the way down to the bottom one. Violent behavior has to happen right now. And then the last phase, of course, is them actually carrying out that act or that violent behavior. So, to summarize this first module that I covered, it's very difficult to profile anyone that's an active shooter. We've learned that there's no one size fits all. There's no one person or, profile that we can determine who's going to be an active shooter. So we really have to look at their behavior, right? We have to focus on what are they doing, what type of stressors are they going through, how do they cope with those stressors. We have to look at an individual's thinking, their feeling, their behavioral patterns, and how they react to negative events. And then effective active shooter and violence prevention requires a coordinated effort by family, friends, and stakeholders, and our community and our law enforcement entities through planning, open communication, working together as a unified responsive front prior to an event. If you had a chance to grab one of these, please do. If you haven't got one, please get one at the end because this really talks about that last bulletin there. It's called Connect, Plan, Train, and Report. And not only that, it's got my information on the back. So it's got my business card on there, but it's called Security Starts Here. And it's really about hometown security is what we call it. And the premise behind hometown security is we all can't do it alone. The chief mentioned it earlier. The local law enforcement agencies can't do it alone. The feds definitely can't do it alone. We need everybody. It has to be a holistic approach. We need everyone. We need the community involved. That's really what that flyer is about, is making that connection. Having that plan, whether it's in your head or it's a written plan. But having that plan is going to give you the advantage that will help hopefully save your life if you're confronted in one of these situations. And then the last piece is reporting. Reporting that information to your law enforcement, reporting it in to your campus administrators, reporting it into your local fusion system or center. We have the See Something, Say Something program I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, but that's the conduit for how do you report something that's suspicious. Okay, so my next segment is going to be on preparation. It's going to focus on things that you guys can do, protective measures that you guys can do to help prepare for an active shooter or workplace violence incident. So some of these protective measures you may have already established or you may be working on. Hopefully this will be a good reminder for you. Create a system for reporting signs of potentially violent behavior. If you have this is great. If you don't, I encourage you to develop some type of program that allows you to do this, so that you can report incidents that are happening of individuals that may be exhibiting violent behavior or aggressive behavior. Make counseling services available to employees. Ensure employees are familiar with and trained to current active shooter and emergency response plans. Establish a safe area within the facility for assembly and refuge during crises. A few years ago, there was an incident down at Santa Monica College. Do you guys remember that incident? So the active shooter incident that happened at Santa Monica College was an interesting situation. And we went there after the incident. We went there with Santa Monica PD and LAPD. We were invited to come down and take a look at the campus and look at it and do a security assessment. Kind of figure out what some of their vulnerabilities were, their unique vulnerabilities of the facility, and how they could, harden that facility a little bit more. And what we found out is the library there, which was where the individual was neutralized. What happened was during the event, early in the morning, it started out very similar to Virginia Tech. There was a domestic incident. The individual killed his father and his brother, set the house on fire, which immediately became a diversion, right? So all the first responders basically went over to the house, and he went on another shooting rampage. He had carjacked someone, took their car, and driving over towards the college, got into a shootout. A couple of people were killed. He got out of the vehicle and ran onto campus and shot a couple more people, then ran into the library. Now, when he got to the library, the individuals working behind the desk had already heard the shots, and they had already started to assemble and gather each other. And what they did next was pretty amazing. But one of the issues that we found with the college was a lot of the doors had these panic bars on them, but they were the newer panic bars that were electronic, and they had been set for a 15-second delay. Because one of the issues that they were having at the college was individuals stealing equipment going out the back door. And so by putting a 15-second delay on it, they figured they could catch anyone that was trying to steal TVs or whatever it was they were trying to steal going out the back door. So what happened is you had a bunch of individuals up against the door pushing on the panic bar, but they could not get out, and so it created this log jam, which was a really bad situation and could have been a lot worse for the situation there. So what happens next is the individual comes into the lobby area of the library, and all of the staff, they gather each other up and they go into a room in the back. And I've highlighted this area here on the chart because what they did was a pretty good practice, and I've already started to see a lot of other facilities do this. And if you don't have this, you should maybe look into it, work with the chief. But they developed a room, what they call a safe room. It had a door, and it had a pretty robust lock on it. And literally, it was a safe room. They actually had a safe in there that they kept petty cash on. And what they did was they pushed the safe in front of the door, so this individual could not get through. They immediately silenced their cell phones. They crouched down behind furniture, and they pretended that they weren't in there. Now, he saw them go back there and followed them and was trying to break through the door. He couldn't push it open, so he started to shoot through the door. And as he was shooting through the door, he realized he heard law enforcement coming in. He went back out to the front. They made contact with him, and he was neutralized. But that safe room definitely saved the lives of those employees that day. and very smart for them to do so. Establish communication protocols and means to instruct personnel on immediate personal protective actions. And this is different every place that we go to. And we don't really recommend that you do it one way or the other, but that you have something in place. And you may use a combination of both depending on the type of situation, whether you're going to evacuate staff or shelter in place. But again, this gets back into a run, hide, fight, which I'm going to talk about coming up in the response. Report missing or stolen equipment, identification badges, including weapons, or to the proper authorities. We always ask that question when we come out and we do an assessment, because a lot of times what happens is someone gets let go or terminated, and they take their card with them, and we always forget about it. We're just worried about the individual, right? We got rid of the individual. We got rid of the problem. What about all the stuff the individual has access to? So their card, their accounts, their email accounts, their passwords, things like that. You want to make sure you have policies in place so that when you are terminating someone for whatever reason, that you are removing those access items from them as well. Be familiar with the See Something, Say Something campaign, and have that material readily available on your campus. If you don't have that currently, we strongly encourage you to develop a program. We have a program that we can design materials for the campus. We can put the campus logo on it. We can put the PD logo on it. We'll put the DHS logo, but we'll put whatever phone number you want on there, and you can post them on campus. If you see something suspicious, report it to here. That way your students and your staff become your eyes and your ears for your security for your campus. Increase visibility of armed security and law enforcement personnel in areas adjacent to and in front of security checkpoints to deter unwanted activity. I was at a facility not too long ago, and walking around, my partner and I were doing what we do, and we see a maintenance, looks like a maintenance cart pull up, but on the side of the maintenance cart was a placard that said security. And we thought that was odd, and we thought, this guy's obviously the engineering staff, but his cart says security. So we asked, and they told us that their reasoning behind that was everyone there is considered security. They're the eyes and ears, because their staff receives specific training to always be on the lookout and be looking for suspicious activity. So to anyone coming off the street, they're not going to know the difference. They're just going to see a cart with security and say, oh, this is good. They've got a roving security. And so we thought that was a very good additional tactic that they used to increase the visibility of their security presence. Preparation and management. Having your escape routes and stuff posted on your door, that's great. We encourage that. Making sure that your staff as well as your students are familiar with those escape plans and routes. I mentioned the Washington Naval Yard shooting earlier, and I'm a big fan of after-action reports. I like to read them. I like to learn from them. One of the things that we learned from the Washington Naval Yard shooting was it's a very big campus, a very big complex, and very similar to a university. Lots of different buildings that look very similar. And when this incident happened, all the stuff that we saw in the video earlier was true. The initial reports were that, there were multiple attackers, different guns on different sides of the campus. Those all turned out to be incorrect, but when the law enforcement response started to roll in, they probably had close to 20 different agencies responding. This is Washington, D.C. You've got all the federal agencies there. You've got Park Police, Secret Service, Capitol Police. You've got Washington Metropolitan Police, and you've got the Naval Police there. But they're all showing up. Most of the times they're all on different radio channels. They all have different uniforms and different equipment. The challenge that they had, and this was spelled out in the after-action report, was They didn't know the buildings because the buildings were not numbered on the outside. And so all the buildings looked the same. And that greatly hampered their response. You know, which building is the shooter in? Oh, he's in building 205. Okay, which one is 205? It's the 2-story brick building over there. Okay, so there's 5 2-story brick buildings in that direction. So we got to search and clear every one of them. So one of the things that we suggest when we come out and we do our assessments is make sure your buildings are clearly marked, which you guys do have them here on campus, from the ground and also from the air. Because with these types of incidents, law enforcement will use their airships, their air support, which will enhance the ground response on the ground. So that is key. The other thing is having those preparedness kits. How many people here have a go bag, go kit of some sort? Okay, so about half. That's good. So you want to have a go kit. You want to have one at work, so in the office. You want to have one in the car. You want to have one at home. I drive my wife crazy with this. She's like, "What do you have all this stuff for?" And I said, "You never know. You've got to be prepared." I have one in the car. I've actually got a Pelican case in the car that's got all my work gear, and then a go bag, you know, with my food and water and MREs and things like that, just in case we have the big 8.0 earthquake, that I may not be coming home for a couple days. But you need to be prepared. Now, Katrina taught us a valuable lesson, Hurricane Katrina back in 2005. Is, you know, at that point we always preached, oh, you got to have a kit ready, and you need 48 hours worth of supplies in there to get you through 48 hours. There were people that were without food and water for 2 weeks after Hurricane Katrina. So make fun of the people that we call preppers if you want, but they are actually pretty smart. So you need to stock up at home. If you don't have a backup generator at home, I encourage you to get one. Keep enough water for everyone in your household for 72 hours, at least 72 hours. Food, dry goods, medication, clothing, batteries, things like that, because they will come in handy, because you'll be on your own during an incident. It will take a while for first responders to get to you. Activate an emergency notification system during an emergency situation. So I was very pleased to learn about the CAS system and the RAVE system that you guys have so that you can get notifications out to staff and students. Persons with access and functional needs. This is something we often forget about during an incident. You know, run, evacuate, or hide or fight is all well and good if you're ambulatory, right? If you can't move, then you have to have someone else do it for you. So we've got to be prepared to move those individuals. Excuse me. Last year, we had our big DHS conference for my unit. There's about 110 of us around the country. We had that in New Orleans, but we sat down and we met with one of my colleagues who used to be chief of police for New Orleans Police Department. He was actually there when Hurricane Katrina hit. And we talked to them about some of the things that they saw, some of the things that they did, how they responded, how they got through that incident. It really gets back to being prepared and understanding, you know, what's the worst that can happen and how can I get through it. One of the things that they were not prepared to deal with was this responding to a persons with functional needs. You know, our elderly, there were, and you've probably heard a lot of these stories, there were several hospitals that were just completely abandoned during Hurricane Katrina. Nursing homes that were abandoned. At one point, staff were told you have 2 choices you can do. You can leave your patients or you can euthanize them. Imagine being faced with that decision. You either abandon them or you let them have a peaceful death. And no one wants to go through that. But you've got to have a plan in place. Cal OES last year put out an active shooter awareness guide that really talks about a lot of this stuff that we really don't want to deal with. Dealing with individuals that may have disabilities, either handicapped or they have functional needs, developing a buddy system for assistance evacuating or concealing themselves, use of personal assistance devices, individuals that are in wheelchairs, crutches, or canes. You got to have a plan in place to evacuate these individuals as well. Preparing for incident recovery, communicating with victims and families. It is important that you have a family reunification plan put together ahead of an incident. Who is going to be the designated official for responding to the media? The last thing you want is your college president or your administrator out there talking to the press and not being prepared for it, right? Has the facility established a family hotline? Where should family meet? Where should they go to give information? The last thing you want is individuals showing up at the actual scene of an incident and seeing their loved ones laying there dead on the ground. Who is responsible for gathering information related to victim identities, extent of their injuries, and what hospitals are being utilized? What facility personnel provide counselors for employees or families, and how will concerns about returning to work be handled? You know, one of the other things that we see is that grief counseling is critical. Making that service available through your mental health professionals. Making that available to staff and students. And then also having it for your first responders. You know, that we forget about these guys. We think they're tough guys. Chief mentioned they put their Superman cape on and they go in. And they do what they have to do. But don't think that it doesn't have an effect on them. I think it was the active shooter situation in Aurora, Colorado at the movie theater. One of my colleagues out there was telling me about this, that and Chief mentioned this earlier. You know, what we used to do is we used to set up a perimeter and wait for the SWAT team to get there to go in. We can't afford to do that now. We got to form contact teams and go in and get the individual. Excuse me. But fire hasn't really gotten up to that point yet. We're starting to see fire just really get trained up on going into the warm zone and being able to operate in that environment. Before then, fire had to sit back and wait. And they knew the longer they waited, it was not going to be a recovery mission. It was going to be a dead body identification mission. They knew that by the time they were going to go in there, it was going to be, you know, go in with the coroner and pick up bodies. It's not going to be going in and rendering first aid. So that really takes a toll on you psychologically, knowing that there's nothing you can do, that individuals are dying as you wait to go in. Recovery. After an incident occurs, it is important to manage the consequences and analyze the lessons learned. I talked about that. It's very critical to look at the incident that might happen, as hard as it is, but you have to talk about what worked and what didn't work and how can you improve that. Grief counseling, I talked about that. Analyze recent active shooter situations for lessons learned, create an after-action report, refine your emergency action plans, and then conduct training. I'm going to go into a brief case study. We saw this on the FBI video. You saw Chief Patrick Gannon, who was the chief out at Lawa PD at LAX. But this incident happened November 1st, 2013 at T3. T3 is the Tom Bradley terminal. And about 9:20 a.m., the individual came into the airport and came in at the TSA passenger screening area and started shooting. One of the individuals that was shot and killed was a TSA agent who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That individual was killed, and then the suspect started working his way down the terminal into the food court and began shooting other people as well. Law enforcement made contact with him and took him down. One of the lessons, I'll go through 4 quick lessons learned real quick on this, but after the report was released, we found out that a lot of the emergency alert warning systems, including red phones that had been designated throughout the airport terminals, were not working. They had not been updated. Police were not getting the information that they needed to find out where this individual was quick enough. Although the emphasis on multi-agency coordination and unified command was very strong among the agencies participating, there needs to be continued emphasis on incident command basics. Again, excuse me, we heard this in the video. Fire is very versed at this. This is what they do day in, day out. Law enforcement, there's room for improvement. We're getting better, but you know what we saw with the LAX is that there were a lot of law enforcement agencies that were not working within this unified command structure. They did not have their commanding officers reporting in to the unified command group. They were just out there trying to get the bad guy and really not helping being part of the solution. While efforts were made to use social networking and commercial media to inform the general public, public mass notification within the airport was lacking and must be addressed. So they had people out on the tarmac, out on the runways, walking around in places that they shouldn't be walking around in because they were not getting the information from the airport. Where should they evacuate to? Even though significant attention and resources have been applied, the observations in the report indicate a need to take a more focused, risk-based approach to security and preparedness. So we're helping them work on a lot of that stuff with training. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. I'd say 5 minutes. And if we could be back here at 5 of 12, and then we'll finish up the last section, and we'll have a few minutes for Q&A. So the next section I'm going to cover is employee response. And this video is about 4 minutes, a little over 4 minutes. And it's really going to talk about options for consideration, things that you guys can do as employees and staff here.
We have an active shooter. Stand by for further information.
Tragedies such as the 2007 mass shooting on the campus of Virginia Tech, the 2009 shooting at the Fort Hood, Texas military post, and the 2011 attempted assassination of Representative Gabrielle Giffords at a public appearance in Arizona are all examples of active shooter situations. An active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people inside an occupied structure or outside in a populated area. In most cases, there is no pattern or method to their selection of victims. Active shooter situations are unpredictable and evolve quickly. It is important to be prepared for such an event. Make it a practice to identify potential escape routes and have a plan in mind, even if you are just visiting a facility. In the event of a shooting at your location, you must quickly determine the most reasonable way to protect your own life. You will need to determine if the best course of action is to evacuate or to hide. Call 911 when it is safe to do so. If there is an accessible escape route, attempt to evacuate. Be sure to leave your belongings behind. Help others escape if possible, but do not attempt to move wounded people. Evacuate regardless of whether others agree to follow. Warn individuals not to enter an area where the active shooter may be, and follow the instructions of any police officers. If evacuation is not the best option, find a place to hide where the shooter is less likely to find you. And be sure your hiding place does not trap or restrict you or your options for movement. Consider the difference between cover and concealment. Cover will protect you from gunfire, and concealment will hide you from the view of the shooter. Quickly choose the best option. If you are caught out in the open and cannot conceal yourself or take cover, you might consider trying to overpower the shooter with whatever means are available. To protect your hiding place, lock the door if you can. Block the door with heavy furniture and close, cover, and move away from windows. Hide behind large items such as cabinets or desks. Remain quiet. Silence your cell phone and/or pager. Even the vibration setting can give away a hiding position. When you call 911, remember to tell the operator the location of the active shooter. If there are multiple shooters, physical description of and number of weapons held by the shooter, as well as the number of potential victims at the location. When law enforcement arrives on the scene, their primary goal is to eliminate the threat and stop the shooter as soon as possible. First responders will not be able to stop to help injured persons until the environment is safe. Knowing what to expect will help keep you calm and allow law enforcement to quickly neutralize the threat. Officers may arrive in teams with tactical equipment such as vests, helmets, and rifles. They will need to take command of the situation. Expect to experience officers shouting orders and even pushing people to the ground for their safety. It is possible that officers from multiple jurisdictions will arrive on the scene. When law enforcement officials arrive, it is important that you keep your hands visible at all times. Avoid making any sudden movements. Avoid pointing, screaming, and/or yelling. Put down any items. Immediately raise your hands and spread your fingers. Remain calm and follow instructions. Do not stop to ask officers for help when evacuating. Just proceed in the direction from which officers are entering the location. For more awareness resources, please visit dhs.gov/critical infrastructure.
Okay, so that video there, we basically saw some things that you guys should be aware of for the response to an active shooter situation. This really gets into the run, hide, fight portion, kind of reiterates what the chief presented on earlier. In an active shooter situation, you should quickly determine the most reasonable way to protect your own life. First thing you should do is run. You want to get out of the harm, get out of the way of the individual that's doing the shooting. If there's an accessible escape path, attempt to evacuate the premises first. If you're unable to run, then hide is the next thing you should do. If you cannot evacuate, find a place to hide where the active shooter is least likely to find you. And as a last resort, fight. Only when your life is in imminent danger, attempt to disrupt or incapacitate the active shooter. The video talked about the attempted assassination of Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords back in 2011, January 2011. And, excuse me, an interesting story, speaking to one of my counterparts out in Phoenix, who was talking to some of the PD reps out there. But with this incident, the individual had showed up for the public speaking engagement by the Congresswoman that morning, and there was a young or elderly woman in the line, waiting in line to see the Congresswoman. And she decided she'd go inside the grocery store and get a bottle of water. So she went in, and while she was in the store, she heard the shots being fired, the gunshots. She came back out, and she was right in the middle of this incident. And what she did next was amazing. It helped save her life and the life of others. She immediately got down next to the curb. She was an elderly woman. She was pretty small in size, and she was able to hide herself next to the curb. But she stood there, and she was waiting and praying this individual didn't see her. What she did next was amazing. The shooter ran out of ammunition, so he was getting ready to reload. She jumped up and she yelled, "Don't let him reload." And she went over and grabbed this individual by the shoulders and started to knee him as hard as she could in the groin. And then everybody else kind of bum rushed him to the ground, to the point where this individual was yelling, "Ow, stop it, you're hurting me." This guy had already shot a couple of people, including the Congresswoman. But just by her taking action, deciding that she wasn't going to just lay there, she was going to do something. She saw a critical point where she could have done something. He was going to reload. I'm not sure, I don't recall if his gun jammed or if he was just out of ammunition. But he was going to reload, and she saw, that's my time, I got to do it now. And she jumped on him and took him down. So this gets back to that, as a last resort, fight back. It is important to train employees they can react if they are confronted with an active shooter. Now this works great for adults, but as we know with Sandy Hook, you may have children, small children, that are not going to be able to overpower an adult. So you've got to have other plans in place. These situations will evolve quickly. Quick decisions can mean the difference between life and death. If you're in harm's way, you need to quickly decide the safest course based on the scenario in front of you. Assisting emergency responders. And we saw in the video, first thing you want to do if you're hearing shots, call 911. If you're calling 911 from your cell phone, it's probably going to go into California Highway Patrol. Their dispatch is going to send it to the appropriate law enforcement organization. But there's some key things that you want to tell them. Location of the active shooter. So your location, the location of the active shooter, the number of shooters if you know if there's more than one, physical description of the shooter, number and type of weapons that he might, is he carrying a handgun, is it a long gun, what is he carrying? Number of potential victims that may be either shot or that may be impacted at the location. Now, it's key to remember that when law enforcement arrives, their primary responsibility is to eliminate the threat. They will not render first aid until that individual has been terminated. Officers may arrive in teams with tactical equipment such as vests, helmets, or rifles, or they may just arrive in plain clothes. And we saw with Santa Monica, there were a lot of officers that were responding that were in plain clothes. And that becomes a training issue, right? Getting back to, are there things that you guys, or things that law enforcement can do to identify each other as law enforcement, and do they carry those with them? Some type of vest or a badge that they can quickly throw on that identifies them as a law enforcement individual if they don't have access to their uniform or their raid jacket or whatever it is that they carry. Officers will need to take command of the situation. Expect officers to shout orders or push individuals to the ground. Again, the chief talked about it earlier. Don't be concerned with grabbing your belongings. Keep your hands up and visible, fingers spread apart, so that the law enforcement officers will be able to quickly determine if you are a threat or if you are not a threat. Reaction of managers. There's some key things that managers need to keep in mind as well, because keep in mind, as a manager, your employees and your subordinates are going to be looking at you for guidance. They're going to be following you. So if you've been designated as a warden or a, I see some finger pointing in the back, yeah, that's you. There's some key things you want to do. Remain calm. If you're calm, more than likely your staff and folks that are looking to you for guidance, they will be calm as well. But if you're just coming unglued and going crazy, then they're probably going to do the same thing. Take immediate action. Do something. Lock and barricade the doors if appropriate. Evacuate staff and or customers to a safe area via a pre-planned or evacuation route. So the law enforcement response, we saw a lot of that with the videos earlier. They're going to want to gather immediate and accurate information, immediately prepare contact teams, two-man teams, three-man teams, or the single-person team. Multiple teams, develop rescue teams, request fire and EMS to establish a staging area, and then directions from law enforcement responders. Again, leave your belongings behind. You can always replace those. Keep your hands visible. Follow the instructions of any police officers and remain calm and follow their instructions always. So the last piece I'll get into, I'm going to talk about some of the active shooter materials that we have available. That's a good follow-up to the information that I presented on today. If you didn't get a chance, grab one of these. It says Active Shooter Preparedness Program. It's got some very key links on it, and I'll go through them. The DHS, we have some materials. We have a basic guidebook. This laser pointer works here. This one here, Active Shooter, How to Respond, is a really good one. When the agency was fat and happy and we had plenty of money flowing, we had a gazillion of these at the office. We don't have any of them now. We've given them all out. But we posted this on our website, so if you go to dhs.gov/activeshooter, you can download that. It's a really nice poster, but really it's a guidebook, kind of walks you through if you don't have an active shooter plan at your facility, or if you want to enhance it or refresh it. There's some good stuff in there. Again, we used to have a gazillion of these little wallet cards. They're kind of like your CAS cards. They were about this big. You could carry in your purse or your wallet, but it had some really good information on it. Just a brief overview of profile. There's no profile of an active shooter. Some characteristics to keep in mind. How to respond. Again, this gets back into run, hide, fight, evacuate, hide out, or take action. And then on the back, there's some specific resources that you can look into. So it was a good little card to carry around as well. We have some really good online training that I do want to make you aware of. I believe it was after Sandy Hook, 2012. We came up with the Active Shooter, What You Can Do. It's a 45-minute online program. You go to the FEMA website, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and you go to their Emergency Management Institute, EMI, and you basically develop a profile that gets you a student number. And you go to IS. IS stands for Independent Study 907. But what this is a self-paced course that takes about 45 minutes to complete. It'll go over all the stuff I talked about today, but it will also give you a little quiz at the end, and you get a nice little certificate that you can print out. And a lot of places use that for employees to put in their personnel record to make as a record of training. Upon completion, you'll get a nice certificate, take an exam. I mentioned see something, say something earlier today, and again, this gets back to situational awareness and using your staff and your students as additional eyes and ears for your campus and your organization. The See Something, Say Something program, we stole it from New Jersey Metro, and they were fine with that. But we've coined this phrase, and we actually have a program where we can make up customized materials, such as these posters. We can do them in different languages. You can do them in Spanish or whatever language that you may want to have in addition to just English. But we can put your logo on there. We can put specific numbers for either campus PD or if you've got a hotline or something like that. And then the only thing about the program, we design the materials. We don't print them out. We don't have the budget to print them out for everyone who requests them. So we give them back to you in electronic format, and then it's up to you to print them out. But we can do posters, trifolds, pay stub inserts, tent cards, whatever you want. Public service announcements. Those are great. We had, City of Pasadena took advantage of this. We had the chief of police down there. Chief Sanchez took advantage of the public service announcement. He actually had one recorded for the Rose Bowl and Tournament of Roses parade. And they showed it on TV probably a month out to the incident as kind of an awareness for not only the residents of Pasadena, but people that are coming in from outside of the area visiting to be aware of things. Situational awareness, again. That is it for me. That is my contact information. I've also put my partner, Scott, his information up there. So if you can't get a hold of me, you can get a hold of Scott and get 2 for the price of 1. I'm going to open it up to questions. Anything about either I've presented or Chief has presented on that we can address, we'd love to do so. Yes, please.
So I'm thinking in terms of liability for instructors in the classroom or staff. So if I am sort of in a position of control over my students, and I guess my question is, what risks do we take when we're directing them to do X, Y, or Z if something were to happen? Is there liability involved with that?
There's liability in everything today. I honestly think, and I'm going to refer back some personal lessons during the break. Brian and I spoke about personal family things. I would go to my children's K through 8, K through 12 schools respectively, and I would go meet the teacher on the orientation day, and we'd do all the pleasantries. But one of the things I would do with my children was also talking about evacuation routes. So to address your liability issue, from a smaller, younger age group populace, their preferred method is to shelter in place. And we kind of, some institutions still do it. There's pluses and minuses to the card under the door system, what level of alert you are. My instruction to my family, to my children, yes, that's what they're going to tell you to do, but we survey the classrooms, and the last one I did with my kids, we were together, they were in a second floor classroom. I said, okay, you can get out this window, you hang down, you hang drop, you may hurt your leg, you may hurt yourself, you drag yourself, and we have a rally point, and this is where we're going to meet you. So if this happens, I want my kids running away, because for me, a moving target's harder to hit than a stationary target. If I have individuals running, again, the human behavior of an active shooter, they're lazy. Human behavior is lazy. So do I want to get a cluster of people here and get the biggest body count and get my name on the news? Because really, there's a bunch of things that happen all throughout every year that you never hear about. Or you maybe get a blip on the radar. But where's the big ones? Where's the ones that we really take attention to? When the really truly innocent, like the Sandy Hook incident happens, are the high body counts. So if I survey this room and I'm a bad guy, well, why do I waste my time shooting this one individual over here where I got a cluster of people here? So if you're running that way, no offense to you, but it's that type of mentality. Liability, that's lawyers are in business for a reason. Yes, ma'am.
I'm house manager at Pacific Conservatory Theater here next door, and hopefully we'll never have this situation happen. But if it were to happen, that there were an active shooter in the house, in the theater, my instinct, and based on what I'm hearing here, would be to hold the fire alarm. get people moving, because not everybody's going to know what's going on, but they know what that means. That means to get up and get out.
Sure.
So now they are all moving.
That's the part, I'm glad you're saying that. And the thing about this is there is no cookie cutter, it's going to happen this way. So there can't be in your mind a prepared response. It has to be thinking on the fly, using non-conventional methods. That's a great idea.
I mean, if he was in the lobby, I'm not going to do that, because then it's like, hey, here they come.
Well, then again,
The thumb locks on the doors.
yeah.
Procedures.
Yeah, if there is, I'm a stage manager at BCBA. There are thumb locks on all of the doors to the house.
Sure.
From the lobby into the house.
Sure. From a personal point of view, Brian touched on it, restaurants, gatherings, weddings, anywhere there's a place to sit. I know where I want to sit. I want to sit with my back against the wall. I've got the biggest perimeter view of the room as people enter it. And not necessarily for this, but I've seen instances where armed robberies have happened when police officers have been in restaurants or locations. So unfortunately, we're all subject to that. Situational awareness can be taught and trained at a young age. My children, when we lived in Florida, we'd get Disney passes, and my toddler-age twins, who some of you met during my swearing in that are 16 now, I was driving our little family minivan, and a man caught my attention, and he looked like a bad guy. For lack of better words, my senses kicked up, and I looked, and I did one of these long, hard stares, and we walked past us, and my daughter behind me, who was toddler age, 4, 5, 6 years old, said, "Daddy, did you see that man? He was a bad guy, wasn't he?" My wife in the passenger seat goes, "Oh, God." All right. Well, one better. I said, "You did. Did you notice that?" And I'm encouraging this because this is not something I want to suppress. She goes, "Yeah, he got into that red Honda, Florida plate, 123 ABC. So if a child can learn it, we can learn it. It can be taught. And they might have a more intuitive mind to remember those days. I can tell you, I remember he got into a red car. I don't know the brand, and I definitely didn't look at the license plate. But I saw, I assessed, I saw the risk go by, and I passed it off. But it's that type of awareness, that type of behavior. A restaurant, I can not be the one. I can go to the bathroom while my family's getting seated. They know what seat I want to be in. They all do. They all know where Daddy needs to be. It's just that heightened state of alert in this society that we live in. I've talked to countless victims of crimes, and I've interviewed people who've either had their purses snatched or whatever the offense, and during the interview they'll say, "I just didn't feel right. I saw that something, it made my hair on the back of my neck stand up." Okay, we are all instinctive animals. We're human beings, but we're instinctive animals. Trust your instincts. Not everyone shares the same moralistic background that we do. People will behave in manners that way, it'll shock your conscience. So when the shooting started in that video that we played earlier, what do you do? There's people, what do we do? There's text messages. Should we take it? Err on the side of caution. Can't hurt. Worst case scenario, you got to come back and take a test again. Is it explainable? I think so. You had a question, ma'am?
Yeah, I'm an L, and we do have a lock on the door with a keypad, but I used to teach in C, and I don't believe those doors locked. And I remember a time when even the windows were locked down. So I'm wondering, have you gone through all the buildings on campus to see if locks can be put on the doors?
Yes.
Without faculty all having to carry keys, or?
Yes. Ideally, if I can give you my Shangri-La college campus setting, it's going to cost us millions of dollars. Right. It'll have hardened perimeter fencing. It'll have limited ingress and egress points. It'll have a network of surveillance cameras. And surveillance cameras aren't meant to catch work who's coming in at 2 minutes after when they're supposed to be here. It is truly a protective measure for preventing crime and or solving it if there is an incident. It integrates this Shangri-La campus that I'm hoping to build in small segments. We'll have an integrated badge ID system which key card all of our entrances. So the thumb screws and locks will integrate all into one big system. I've seen these work on larger institutions and universities very effectively. We are working towards the right direction on this, so you will see an evolution of the thumb lock to even something better, hopefully. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about the safe room that you talked about at Santa Monica College. I thought that was a good idea.
And I wondered if there are certain characteristics about a room that when you're thinking about that for maybe your department area, that you should identify this room might be better than others. And then also, did that campus police know that that room had been identified by the library staff as their safe room?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So within Homeland Security, what we suggest when we go out and we do these assessments and we're looking at these types of rooms, and they're really not specifically rooms for an active shooter incident, but it could be also a hurricane or earthquake shelter room. So a room that's been fortified, that's got a good structure to it, that has more than just one entry. So you've got a back door that you can get out if you need to, but that has a good door, a solid door that can be locked. That's what we would consider a safe room. Doesn't have to have bulletproof walls or anything like that, but just a room that employees that can go into for all types of adverse conditions, whether it's an earthquake or an active shooter that may be in your facility.
A characteristic, just thinking of the different places around campus, the first one popped in my head is like where the president's office is. There's that break room between that one and the next set of offices. I believe it's Andrew's section there. That center room would be a great safe room for those two areas because it's only accessible from the interior, so it's not immediately accessible from the hallway. It has solid walls and solid doors, so you can get in there, close and lock those doors, and shelter a whole group of people from that wing. I like the idea of it to some degree. Will every one of our buildings have something so well designed? Maybe not. And I'm pretty certain we've never designed a building yet with that in mind. Brian speaks to some of the homes. Coming from South Florida, I know some of the builders actually built hurricane rooms, and it's usually a reinforced master bedroom closet, which has poured walls and its own roof structure, so in the event of a hurricane or with the tornadoes that come with it, the structure stays. Some of the tornado-ridden states have similar shelters, which could be for that same purpose. Yes, sir.
So there's a lot of talk now about, because of these incidences, that about concealed carry, and you had mentioned just towards the end of your presentation about identifying yourselves, and like take for instance your restaurant scenario, and if something happened and then you drew your weapon, and how as the public to know your true identity as a professional allowed to carry that gun and then take action within that premise, premises.
Sure.
What I'm saying. How does that badge look? And is that still the viable thing for us to go on to trust you, believe you that that's who you say you are?
Most agencies have policy on concealed carry and the identifying things that have to go along with it. If someone is off duty, traditionally, I can't speak for every law enforcement agency, but if you have an off-duty holster on your hip and a jacket over it, generally your badge should be near it. So a plainclothes person, like a detective, they wear a gun, they wear a suit jacket, but usually their badge is right next to their gun. And the idea of that is if someone sees a gun, they see a badge right next to it, their heightened level of alarm doesn't really get shot off. A lot of times officers will have their badge clips either in their wallets or on their person that'll have a hanging chain, kind of like a dog tag style chain. So you might see on the center of that person's center, but from behind, and this is why these misreports come out of multiple shooters, a plainclothes person in regular jeans and t-shirt goes down a hallway like this. So you see, you don't see that gun or where that badge was, where the holster was on their chest. So I guess that's just judgment. If someone's telling you I'm a cop and I got a gun and I'm not shooting you, I'm probably a good guy.
So one of the things that happened with Santa Monica was exactly that incident. The individuals that were in the safe room barricaded in there, and they were waiting. And when the PD got there and started to do their sweep and clear the library there, they had gotten to the safe room and they were trying to make contact with those employees. Okay, it's law enforcement, you can come out. And they did not want to come out because they didn't know if this individual knocking on the door was another bad guy. So, having something in place that's worked out where that individual can identify himself, and I think in this case they ended up sliding the badge under the door or something like that, but they were able to, assure the individuals inside that they were law enforcement.
And for our purposes here, the rave alert's going to give you the all clear. It's good. We're going to put out at some point, we're good. So at that point, if you are sheltered in place and someone knocks, it's pretty certain that you'll be okay. Yes?
I was on a campus where, especially the counselors and advisors had like a panic button under their desk.
Mhm.
Have you found that to be effective on campuses? And is it like a matter of money, the reason why there's a lot of campuses that don't have them?
We do have some of those in place here on campus in various areas of concern. And HR is one of our vulnerable areas. And HR, in essence, they kind of get a bad rap to some degree because they tend to be generally the deliverer of the bad news. But the bad news has been decided by employee behavior that's documented by a manager, and usually it's, now they're the person to do the separation aspect of the job. So just by the nature of that business, they tend to be a little more vulnerable.
Are there any thoughts of expanding that to other areas on campus?
Yes. There have been a number of requests for those type of alarms since I've been here that we've accommodated.
To expand on PCPA pulling the fire alarm, what should be the next step to let officials know that it's truly not a fire, it's an active shooter, to really pinpoint really what's going on?
Probably just then a follow-up 911 call. I mean, that's a quick bang. It's going to hit the dispatch center. They're going to alert fire and police. Generally, a police officer is dispatched on a fire call. Not all the time, but if fire's coming, we probably need them anyway for the EMS aspect of what we're doing. I would just hate to send the firemen to the shooting before the cops got there, but I think it's a smart use. And it's that creativity. You know, we can talk about today, we're all in this room together. What do we do if someone comes through this door right here and starts shooting? And we can create a whole scenario and spend 6 hours dealing with that. But now, let's take that same group of people, make it happen in that door. Is it going to be different? Same group of people, same time, it's going to change our entire thinking. But that's the thought process. I don't want you not to lose sleep over what we're presenting today, but I want you to have this, and I'm enthused that these questions are coming. I see the wheels turning. Our, in essence, duty here, all of us, is to provide a safe environment for our students to learn and be successful as students, period. Secondary, to provide a workplace for you that's safe, where you can feel perception of safety. Will we create a perfect environment or perfect world where that's 100%, you know, there's no vulnerabilities? No. But if we can work towards improving on where we are today, that's our goal. I think we'll see a lot of good stuff coming in the near future. The work that we've done, the groundwork, working with our federal partners, I know what I know and I know what I don't know. I know the resources that Brian and his office bring to bear. I've used it before. I'm very excited at the tools that their office has in comparison to the group that I used in Colorado. It's going to be a great comprehensive report, and it's going to be something that I can provide to campus. I like the questions that you're asking because, frankly, if I'm doing my job as an educator, then the things that I look for in terms of site improvements, you'll ask for me. I hope you do, because my inevitable goal is to keep you safe. So, thank you all for your attention. I'm sorry, one more, sir?
I wanted to expand a little the question that was put about concealed carry. Of course, you were speaking about concealed carry for the policemen, and I know in Santa Barbara County, for all practical purposes, civilians don't have permits to carry. But suppose you're in a situation. I was just thinking as I watched the film, if every 10th student was armed, that seems to me that would have been total hell. What do you think?
I'll give you my comparison coming out of Colorado. Colorado, the gun laws are a whole lot more lax than they are here in California. In fact, in Colorado, there's open carry. I was in Walmart for the first time and saw someone with a gun on their hip, and I kind of took me back a little bit. But that's their society. People have asked me, because it's permissive by state constitution, that you could carry in a college setting, in a university setting. They asked, should I? And my question to you is this. Today, I've been here for almost 6 months now. There's some new faces I've never seen here before. So I don't know the good guy from the bad guy, the good girl from the bad girl. So you might mean well, and you could all have concealed carry permits and be totally permissive and have great intentions. When I think from my perspective, and of all of these scenarios, the thing that scares me the most is the crowd of people running out like this. Who's the bad guy? Who's the bad girl? How do I know that like that? So I'm hearing something, I'm going towards gunfire, but who's to say that a bad person just secreted behind me and now I'm vulnerable from my rear? So now you're well-intended, you want to help solve this thing. I come into a room, my initial response is someone shooting. I'm not necessarily going to spend time if I see you with a gun pointing down range, perhaps. All I see is a person where they shouldn't be with a gun, where they're shooting. Could I mistake you as the bad guy? And that's where tragedy happens. And there are force-on-force situations where officers do succumb to friendly fire for those same reasons. Yes, sir.
Responding on that, wouldn't it be, if you had selected people chosen to carry firearms, that would infuse future thoughts of anybody coming into what Allen Hancock College has armed undercover?
There's a lot of arguments both ways. I went to a seminar where the Israeli school system and what the measures they've put in place as a result of their saga of ongoing terrorism and attacks against their populace. School trips don't go out without armed security. There is no one that doesn't serve in the military, male or female. There's armed security. The cost of having that within their school structure is astronomical. If things like Sandy Hook happened again or twice, you might see a big influx towards that goal inevitably. Inevitably, I'd like to hope we have more folks like myself in a uniform that are marked with guns on campus that are trained professionals to do that, to prevent and to have that preventative measure.
And I'll just offer this up as well. We get this question a lot when we go out and conduct our assessments. And we saw a lot of this in response to 9/11 about arming pilots in the cockpit. Very similar argument. But the key thing to remember here is, and the Chief just brought it up on it, you know, carrying a gun is one thing, but being well trained and being able to use it in that situation where your body is stressed is another thing. Anyone in law enforcement knows this, that when you are faced in that situation, your heart rate goes through the roof. And you don't always make the right decisions unless you've gone through that training. It's muscle memory. So having an ordinary citizen who gets a permit that maybe goes and qualifies with a firearm is different than getting that continual training where you're constantly getting that muscle memory and you're going through that stress of how am I going to react, how's my body going to react with that weapon in that stressful situation. So that's another thing to keep in mind when we talk about arming individuals.
But aren't you past that point when you passed, you run away, you hide, you're in your third, it's a matter of life and death.
Yeah, you're saying if that's a last resort. Yeah, but I think the argument that I think we're saying is that it's better to have a trained law enforcement individual with that firearm, you know, whether they're in uniform or undercover, as opposed to someone who's not a sworn officer.
Well, it's kind of a debatable issue because, I mean, it's either fight or fight.
Yes.
If you're in a fight mode, you know, you got no choice.
Yeah, you do what you have to do, correct.
Sure.
In the Writing Center, campus police has been making routes, and that presence is a very strong voice.
Mm-hmm.
So I know on campus, they're circulating in other areas too. So I think that has a lot to say for the carrying of the guns to
Sure.
protect us. So.
I'm glad to hear that. And one of the initiatives I had when I took over here was to try to increase the presence on campus and take the amount of people we have and spread them so they're visible throughout the day, not in a regular pattern, because we don't want to ever have patterns of patrol, but you know, just to have that resource there. We're approachable. I'm approachable. Anytime you want to talk to me about anything, come to me. See something, say something. Campaign is huge. I've seen this work in communities. I've had this community relations where we've done in a different setting, homeowners groups. We've learned about things because someone was brave enough to say, hey, I don't want to bother you, but it's one that comes to mind in classic, and I'm going to divert a little bit, a 55-plus community, gated community. We had community policing officers go to, very good police officers, and developed relationships and trust and broke down some of these barriers and are approachable. And at the end, one of the vice presidents of the Homeowners Association approached them and said, you know, you say, I don't want to bother you. That's how it starts. I don't want to bother you. Well, that's my job. Bother me, please. There's a gentleman that lives here, and he's got a lot of young boys that come visit. I don't think he has grandkids. Well, fast forward, they did a knock and talk, went in, talked to the man, found some pictures, identified the victim, wound up being the first of many victims. He's been a sex predator for over 50 years. And just because someone was brave enough to say something to somebody that didn't seem right in their environment, resulted in someone going to jail for the rest of their lives. So this little bit of tidbit that you think you know, share it. Let me know. Let us vet it out. Yes, sir.
There was a drive on outfitting classrooms with bulletproof whiteboards and such. Has that been implemented at all anywhere that you could share?
There are school districts. I've seen a lot of the products. Some of the ballistic shields that we would use on SWAT, they make now for classrooms. There's a number of different protective devices and measures. I don't know specifically which school districts are using them, if any, or if they're just somebody with a great idea that hasn't caught on yet. Well, thank you all. I appreciate your time. Have a good day.
Ryan, are these